despite the odds.
Get out of here.
It's been a minute since I've called you, just to hear the answer phone. Yeah, I know that you won't get this, but I'll leave a message so I'm not alone. This morning I woke up still dreaming, with memories playing through my head. You never know how much I miss you. The day that they took you, I wish it was me instead. But you once told me don't give up, you can do it day by day. And diamonds, they don't turn to dust or fade away. So I will keep you day and night, here until the day I die. I'll be living one life for the two of us. I will be the best of me, always keep you next to me. I'll be living one life for the two of us. Even when I'm on my own, I know I won't be alone. Tattooed on my heart, all the words to your favorite song. I know you'll be looking down, swear I'm gonna make you proud. I'll be living one life for the two of us. Feel your blood run through me. You're written in my DNA. Looking back in every mirror, I know you'll be waiting, I'll see you again. But you once told me don't give up, you can do it day by day. And diamonds, they don't turn to dust or fade away. I will keep you day and night, here until the day I die. I'll be living one life for the two of us. I will be the best of me, always keep you next to me. I'll be living one life for the two of us. Even when I'm on my own, I know I won't be alone. Tattooed on my heart, all the words to your favorite song. I know you'll be looking down, swear I'm gonna make you proud. I'll be living one life for the two of us, 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 two of us. One life for the two of us.
Capital One's top-rated app looks out for you and your money, so you can shop and bank confidently.
Why not? Why? L'Eau de Parfum, Yves Saint Laurent.
traveling the mountains just to find the loudest tears. We sat down by the fire, knowing we could aim higher, but we didn't know that yet. So if you want something to hold on to, gotta find it first. But here I am, 'cause I've been laying under palm trees, waiting for the summer, knowing there's nowhere to go. 'Cause I am happy on this island, wanna be my farmland. I don't ever want to leave, I'm in a tropic club. I remember the ocean, memories die out too hard. But we were traveling the mountains just to find the loudest tears. We sat down by the fire, knowing we could aim higher, but we didn't know that yet. So if you want something to hold on to, gotta find it first. But here I am, 'cause I've been laying under palm trees, waiting for the summer, knowing there's nowhere to go. 'Cause I am happy on this island, wanna be my farmland. I don't ever want to leave, I'm in a tropic club.
How's it going? All right. Yeah, so I got a DUI. Got arrested for a DUI back in July, so I have to go to jail for a week. Now, tomorrow I have to go into jail for a week, so I won't be streaming for this next week. But yeah, that's the whole reason why I'm going to jail. Honestly, though, I wasn't even drunk, so it was pretty stupid. The DUI laws are dumb. I mean, I don't drink anymore, just because I think that it's probably better for me, but I do think that the DUI laws are stupid and probably, like, it doesn't make any sense, because me at a .08, I'm fine to drive. I can drive completely fine. But, like, if my mom was at a .08, she would be, like, belligerently drunk. You know? So I think they need to put that into account, but... Alright, let's Oh, I never even seen this on here. That's fancy. There we go. All right. We're gonna just get into a game of Risk. Gonna watch some videos and then we'll start doing some research on the Gulf War. So it's this one. Oh. I don't agree with this guy, but I mean his videos are alright, but I don't agree with him at all on most things.
Looks like laundry day is today.
Public life primarily to denigrate and insult. Operate. Some argue that the term fascism functions as little more than a political slur. As history professor Bruce Klucklick writes, the term
I think it
fascism
is.
has functioned in public life
Especially
primarily
nowadays.
to denigrate and insult, operating as the rhetorical equivalent of throwing a tomato at a speaker at a public event. And certainly there is at the very least instability in its usage, but not all uses are equal. And I would argue that now more than ever, fascism, defined broadly as militaristic nationalism and a contempt for liberalism and electoral politics, should be called out at every turn. But why?
They call things fascist that definitely aren't fascist.
Why?
And if those things are fascist, then riddle me a fascist, bro.
Although far from an erotic thriller, Bertram Gross's 1980 book Friendly Fascism will nonetheless leave you in a state of intense frustration. How could someone give such a clear warning of what was to come decades prior? Why didn't we do anything? One reason is because of the gradual, almost slow-motion nature of friendly fascism. What is friendly fascism? Rather than relying on a militant takeover or the charismatic strongman, Gross argues that this form of fascism emerges through the political economy of transnational corporations, or, in plain terms, when those we elect become primarily influenced by private companies. This is the first step, in which one of the central functions of a liberal democracy, in which the government is responsive to voters, withers away. Here I can point to endless studies that show just how often our elected representatives decide to represent corporations over those who elect them.
I'm definitely going for Europe this round. I have a great Europe spawn. So.
This video is sponsored by Brilliant. Something I've always valued is the ability to think critically. However, in a world of so much information, it's tricky to know exactly how one could properly discriminate and make sense of data. In order to, life is pretty much ruled by algorithms and search results, so it's been really insightful to go into exactly how computers are able to process so much data and how computers read. Visit the link in the description below to get started learning STEM for free, and the first 200 people will get 20% off their annual premium subscription. The pernicious character of friendly fascism largely resides in its non-territorial nature. Although many of these big businesses originate in the US, they are not necessarily loyal to any one nation. This is a huge difference between your typical goose-stepping fascism and friendly fascism. The nation does not need to be at the heart of it all. Instead, the nation-state functions as a mere economic unit with its leaders acting as puppets. As Gross writes, a powerful oligarchy operates outside of as well as through the state. Each subverts constitutional government. Each suppresses rising demands for wider participation in decision-making, the enforcement and enlargement of human rights. Now, if you're the average ma and pa multinational corporation, democracy is going to piss you off. People aren't voting out of the best interest of McDonald's usually. Rather,
Democracy is cringe, bro.
they vote in the hopes of having their needs represented and satisfied. But all of these needs, healthcare, education, workers' rights, they all get in the way of quarterly earnings. Democracy must be subtly weakened. One often cited example of how these companies view democracy is in the Trilateral Commission's 1975 report on the excess of democracy in America. In it, they argue that increased engagement of popular classes would threaten the dominance of the business world and the ability to maintain international trade relations. Thinkers such as Chomsky point to this report as a clear example of big business's hostility towards both liberal democracy and the interests of the average individual. To avoid pesky accountability, these companies function outside of the messy democratic limitations of a single state, engaging in a multi-state system that encourages, among other things, the erosion of the tax base. This then leads to shifting the burden of taxation from corporations to the individual. And then, according to Gross, this inevitably leads to a tax revolt movement within the upper middle class. Isn't this terrible for the average citizen? Why doesn't the population demand more from their representatives? Unfortunately, the commingling of big business and government slowly leads to the subversion of democratic principles and rights. Anti-war protests and civil rights rallies are repressed. The three branches of government become further integrated. Hand-picked judges would at first be activist, aggressively reversing previous court decisions and legitimating vastly greater discretion by the
Are they gonna break
police
me?
complex gross rights. The dominance of the business world and the ability to maintain international trade relations. Thinkers such as Chomsky point to this report as a clear example of big business's hostility towards both liberal democracy and the interests of the average individual. To avoid pesky accountability, these companies function outside of the messy democratic limitations of a single state, engaging in a multi-state system that encourages, among other things, the erosion of the tax base. This then leads to shifting the burden of taxation from corporations to the individual. And then, according to Gross, this inevitably leads to a tax revolt movement within the upper middle class. Isn't this terrible for the average citizen? Why doesn't the population demand more from their representatives? Unfortunately, the commingling of big business and government slowly leads to the subversion of democratic principles and rights. Anti-war protests and civil rights rallies are repressed. The three branches of government become further integrated. Hand-picked judges would at first be activist, aggressively reversing previous court decisions and legitimating vastly greater discretion by the expanding police complex, Gross writes. The road to neo-fascism in the US would probably be paved with the granting of
If he breaks again, then I'm just gonna go boom, boom, and then put my troops all there.
emergency powers to further enhance the imperial presidency. Slowly but surely, customary repression becomes a sustained mode of governance. Most of these forms of repression have been seen time and time again throughout American history.
What the
From the
fuck?
excessive power granted to oil companies during the 70s crisis to the Patriot Act, the average voter is left feeling powerless in the face of the
Holy
establishment.
shit.
These tactics, such as the destruction of unions and loss of overall political influence, function to create a world of isolated individuals at the mercy of concentrated power.
Are they gonna try
As
to
John
kill
Dewey
me?
writes, until the means of production, exchange, publicity, transportation, and communication reside in the hands of the public, politics will remain the shadow cast on society by big business. The power
Bro, that was
is
bullshit. What the fuck? I did not expect that. Holy shit, what the fuck? Fuck. What the fuck?
not in the people. So why even try?
Listen up, because this info will save you more money than anything else in 2023. Are you a homeowner that still pays for your electricity? Are you tired of rising electric rates? If your answer is yes, then stick around. We all know that there is an aging demand on the power grid. That is why we continue to see increased
Fuck, bro, and I don't
costs
have
month
any-
after month. That is exactly why, in 2023,
Fuck, and they're gonna
is
kill
paying
me.
homeowners thousands of dollars to make the switch to solar. But there's a couple things you should know. You have to be a homeowner, you have to live in a qualified zip code, and you
Well, I lost.
However, as Gross argued,
What was that like? That was. Damn, bro. Fuck. I guess that's how the cookie crumbles. Fuck. That was bullshit. What the fuck? Friendly fascism.
this sort of doom and gloom is what makes fascism so appealing. Fear paralyzes people. Power granted to oil companies during the 70s crisis, to the Patriot Act, the average voter...
Yeah, the Patriot Act was dumb as fuck, honestly.
Establishment. These tactics, such as the destruction of unions and loss of overall political influence, function to create a world of
I wouldn't say that that was it, but...
isolated individuals at the mercy of concentrated power. As John Dewey writes, until the means of production, exchange, publicity, transportation, and communication reside in the hands of the public, politics will remain the shadow cast on society by big business. The power is not in the people, so why even try? However, as Gross argues, this sort of doom and gloom is what makes fascism so appealing. Fear paralyzes people and creates confusion. Friendly fascism finds its legitimacy, ironically, in the fear that emerges through the social conditions caused by the erosion of democratic institutions. Rather than ruling...
Oh yeah, no. Democracy usually ends up into like a totalitarian government, for sure.
by an iron fist, friendly fascism offers us velvet gloves. The helpless population then begins to support measures that supposedly defend national security, traditional liberties, and individual well-being, even if these measures go against the rights of some. Here we see the wisdom of David Hume. As force is always on the side of the governed, the governors have nothing to support them but opinion. 'Tis therefore on opinion only that government is founded, and this maxim extends to the most despotic and most military governments, as well as to the most free and most popular. Gross notes that friendly fascism can only function with enough of the population viewing it as acceptable or even preferable. Popular opinion matters. To combat friendly fascism, we must understand the logic of this popular opinion. Why would someone defend friendly fascism? Well, it's friendly, at least depending on who you ask. Here I would discourage writing off the rise of the new right as hogs, deplorables, or somehow shallow in thought. Like Gross, this movement views the disenfranchisement of the population as
What the fuck did he
population viewing
just
it as
say?
acceptable or even preferable. Popular opinion matters. To combat friendly fascism, we must understand the logic of this popular opinion. Why would someone defend friendly fascism? Well, it's friendly, at least depending on who you ask. Here I would discourage writing off the rise of the new right as hogs, deplorables, or somehow shallow in thought. Like Gross, this movement views the disenfranchisement of the population as a result of globalization. Elected representatives not only vote against the interests of large sections of their population, they also insult them and denigrate them for being backwards and bigoted. These individuals, experiencing a sense of cultural and economic marginalization from their lack of representation, begin to see the pluralism and openness of liberal institutions as relativistic and nihilistic, or unfriendly. The new right then offers a view of the liberal state as a place of directionless competition between competing social interests.
I mean, that is what it is, though. So
Under the guise of equality and rights, The liberal elites control society through its
They
dominance
do!
over culture and education.
They do, bro. What the fuck?
And who are
He's
the
acting like.
supposed victims of this liberal domination? Those still tied to locality, who experience migration or cultural cosmopolitanism as a threat, as well as the deplorables who hold on to tradition, to their inherited communities and prejudices, even as they are being eroded by globalization, and who are disparaged as backward and bigoted, dependent, and if they are lucky, in need of reskilling by a liberal elite which is the condescending agent of their increasingly dire economic plight, and that dismisses and disparages their feelings of social and cultural dislocation or alienation. We cannot dismiss the experience of these groups as trivial. If anything, this is the product of lower and middle classes experiencing the burden of taxation and the loss of political influence that came about initially from the influence of transnational corporations. Nefariously, however, the new right shifts the blame on expert liberal elites rather than these companies. Liberal democracy, the very institution that could offer them political representation, is seen instead as the very cause of anxiety and fear. What was a class issue has become a cultural one. Here we see the central fascistic impulse as pointed out by Walter Benjamin. Fascism attempts to organize the newly created proletarian masses without affecting the property structure which the masses strive to eliminate. Fascism sees its salvation in giving these masses not their right,
Without affecting the property structure, which. I wouldn't say it. I mean, it does kind of destroy the
but instead a chance to express themselves.
property structure.
The new right is simply promising expression at the expense of genuine empowerment. Project 2025, a report backed by a large...
Oh my goodness, he's saying that Project 2025 is fascist. No, it's fucking not.
number of conservative partners says the quiet part out loud. If the Republicans are elected, Project 2025 appears to be their central agenda. The report outlines an America where the president has total power over the executive branch, where there are frequent crackdowns on political dissidents and regular deployment of the national military as domestic law enforcement. Suddenly, fascism is sounding a lot less friendly. Could this be the conclusion of years of hard work by large companies to strip away Americans of their rights? To remind you, fascism runs on fear.
Bro,
and
what?
this is no time to concede to the fearful anxieties of the new right, an ideology that
What the
gives
fuck was that move? They just did a 4v11, so then they were gonna try to attack. Are they gonna try to attack that 11, bro? What?
up on
That's a
liberalism
noob
in
for
the
sure.
service of a hard managerialism that, let's face it, often sounds a lot like the fascism of old. We shouldn't be scared, but
What did he say?
a lot
Right
less
there.
friendly. Could this be the conclusion of years of hard work by large companies to strip away Americans of their rights? To remind you,
It is not.
fascism
Project 2025 is not that.
runs on fear. And this is no time to concede to the fearful anxieties of the new right, an ideology that gives up on liberalism in the service of a hard managerialism that, let's face it, often sounds a lot like the fascism of old. We shouldn't be scared, but we should be extremely concerned and motivated. Gross asks us to recognize that this is not over. The very areas of our lives that friendly fascism seeks to disturb and silence, unions, ballot boxes, demonstrations, and picket lines, are those spaces where we need to show up most. Attack every step towards friendly fascism in the factories and the fields, in the offices and the supermarkets, in the courts and the legislatures, at the ballot
This is
boxes,
good.
in the
Look at this
classrooms,
war that's going
the
on in
picket
here.
lines, in the press, and on the airwaves. Or, in the words of Viktor Frankl, a man intimately aware of the horrors of fascism, for the world is in a bad state, but everything will become still worse unless each of us does their best.
Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl's the one who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. Islam, a false religion. Islam is a false
Imagine
religion.
if you could design products as quickly as your ideas flow. Imagine if 3D modeling was as natural as drawing with a pencil.
Before time began, there was the cube.
Quran be like. That is funny. I don't even like hate Muslims or anything, but no. I'm not gonna attack blue. I have no need to attack blue right now.
We know not where it comes from, only that it holds the power to create worlds.
It's been a while since I made a video on Islam, and Muslim YouTube is really popular right now with Andrew Tate and Sneeko converting and a lot of their followers and other people's looking into Islam.
I wonder
A lot
what
of them are
this guy,
relying on really
what
bad
the rest of
polemical
this guy's.
arguments. They don't understand what Islam
talk
actually
about
teaches and how it's just
a lot
historical
on my channel,
revisionism.
but I haven't
it has
dedicated
no
a video
continuity,
to
and I
explain
keep
what
seeing
is
literally
Orthodox
the worst
Christianity.
arguments I
So
have
is he an
ever heard.
Orthodox?
Literal
Is he an Orthodox
low-level
Christian?
arguments.
The word Bible is never mentioned in the Bible. The word Christian is never mentioned in the Bible. The word Trinity is never mentioned in the Bible.
And God gave us one rule: don't eat of the tree. So this seems like the perfect time to debunk Islam again, and I've made lots of and how it's just historical revisionism, it has no continuity, and I keep seeing literally the worst arguments I have ever heard. Literal haram level arguments.
The word Bible is never mentioned in the Bible. The word Christian is never mentioned in the Bible. The word Trinity is never mentioned in the Bible.
What the fuck was that?
So this seems like the perfect time to debunk Islam again, and I've made lots of videos on Islam, and no Muslim has been able to offer a good refutation of any of the arguments that I bring up. They just hand wave them. They don't have any responses to these. First of all, the Quran gets history completely wrong. It tries to revise history. It says that Moses, Solomon, Abraham, they were all actually Muslims. Even though if you read the Old Testament,
yeah, it does.
In Torah, which were written way before the Quran, they show that the theology and worship is literally nothing like Islam. The theology that we see, the burning bush and theophanies, all of these things, the angel of the Lord in the Old Testament show the Trinity. It does not show Tawheed. It actually contradicts Islamic metaphysics of how they view God. And how Solomon and Abraham and all these people were worshiping with a priesthood in the temple, with a sacrifice. Islam does not have any of that. Orthodox Christianity has all of that. Orthodox Christianity is a continuity. Why is there this huge departure in Islamic worship? There's no response to that. It's literally nothing like Islam. The Quran plagiarizes people and stories from the Torah, but it ends up making no sense because it doesn't understand the meaning and what those are leading up to. It is leading up to the Messiah. That's who the Jews in the Old Testament were looking for. And we see that in the Messianic prophecies. There's hundreds of them.
Why would they break the alliance?
Really makes no sense. Versus Christianity, that is the fulfillment. The person of Jesus does not make any sense in it.
Why did they break their alliance with me after I... That's weird. Do they think that I'm threatening them with this? Because I'm not. Why would they have broken the alliance? That makes no sense. I'm confused. Okay. Well.
Islam. He was clearly not a Muslim. Jesus drank wine. Alcohol is haram. Jesus talked about God the Father, about the Trinity, all these things which disprove Islam because Jesus was clearly not a Muslim. And part of the Messianic prophecies is talking about how the second temple would be destroyed. And it was destroyed. So the Messiah had to come. And the Messiah is God incarnate. It doesn't make any sense that Jesus, the Messiah, was a Muslim, and we hear that, oh, he was a Muslim because he did prostrations, because he worshipped like Muslims. Okay, where did the Muslims get prostrating in prayers from? Again, Islam came in the 600s. They were just copying from Christians that were doing prostrations. All Islam did was take from Christianity and rabbinical Judaism in the Talmud, and that is not the religion of the prophets of the Second Temple, as we're going to talk about in this video. And they took a little bit from Middle Eastern paganism. I'm going to demonstrate this all in the video. Even if we read the Quran itself, it has a very high view of Christians and the Gospels. Let them be judged by the Gospels. Well, remember, all of history, the Bible shows that Jesus came and he died in the 30s. The church was founded. We have hundreds of years of history and theology in the Christian tradition versus Islam in the 600s. That's when it was invented, because Muhammad said that an angel came to him and revealed the Quran to him, and he's illiterate, but they wrote it down. That's one of the miracles, and that's one of the greatest miracles. But this book, all it did was revise history. It says that Allah switched Jesus out. So why did Allah switch Jesus out and make it look like Jesus died? The cornerstone of Christianity, his death and resurrection. But, actually, Allah did that on purpose, and then he waited 600 years to clarify. This makes no sense. And why would he wait that long when Allah's own confusion, he caused all of this? He is not. He's the worst of planners.
You need to stop everything.
So if you're Muslim, why would you trust the Quran, which came 600 years after Jesus and tries to revise history, versus we could literally look at the history of anyone else in the Bible? The Quran itself praises the Bible. So why would we listen to the Quran? Even if an angel comes from heaven and preaches a different gospel,
No.
let them be anathema.
You fucking attack
And that's the
Blue.
exact situation that Muhammad was in. A quote-unquote angel.
No, they're not.
even revealed this.
They're not affecting me, bro. Why would I attack them for you?
So why would we do that when everything, even the Quran, is saying to listen to the Bible? And that's not the only time that it happens, because it also happens with Joseph Smith and the start of Mormonism.
You're just a cheap knockoff.
Oh no,
Huh?
I'm the upgrade.
These angels delivering false gospels hundreds, thousands of years later. Why would we trust it? We wouldn't. We would just trust the Bible and the church that Christ established. So on every level, Islam is false. It does not have continuity. It does not have historicity. It does not have the correct theology. And even we look at the actions of the Prophet Muhammad. Again, Jesus was perfect. Even Islam says that Jesus is sinless, versus we get Muhammad, who had sexual relations with a minor, and Muslims will go out and defend this.
Then something just snapped. Something in...
Yeah, didn't it? It wasn't it like a 5-year-old too? Aw, you cunt. Why the fuck are they breaking me?
And this is why lots of people leave Islam, because this is one of the greatest prophets, Muhammad, but he is lusting. He has multiple wives, including a 6-year-old, Aisha. It just does not make any sense at all. Some other common arguments you'll hear from Muslims are actually Gnostic and iconoclastic in nature, which makes sense because a lot of in that area, those heresies spread there. And so it makes sense that they're going to be against icons, but they're entirely inconsistent about their ideas of veneration, because you can see what they do at Kaaba. They venerate the Kaaba. They say you can't picture Allah, but the Quran, is the Quran created or uncreated? It doesn't make any sense. If the words are depicting Allah, as I will show, it just refutes their entire theology, because they treat the Quran like a holy book. But what is the Quran depicting? Can it depict Allah? Is there anything like Allah? We're going to get into depth about this, and it's also going to help if maybe you're a Protestant background and you're trying to understand icons. It's self-refuting. Oh, these words in the Quran that describe Allah, this calligraphy, if you read the Quran, a Quranically accurate Allah, I mean, none of this makes any sense. It refutes Islam. That's what we're going to show throughout this video. Islam. And so since Islam copied a lot of this, like from the Talmud, we can see all of these like similarities, like in the way they pray, in the way they pray and everything. We can see that Muslims copied a lot from Jews and Christians. So what would you say some of those similarities are? Because it can refute Islam too.
Right. I'll talk about the general, like not shallow, but like the surface layer similarities, and then I'll minimize this window, and then I want to look at a few verses that are like strikingly similar to the Talmud, which many Muslims have readily said, yeah, we know, that's a good thing, but it logically doesn't make a lot of sense. So is of course the ritualism, but also the legalism, and the legalism to a point where you're racking up points in Islam. They have a concept called good deeds.
Yes,
and they
I
do
get
very
a 10.
menial tasks like drinking water while sitting.
Bro, fuck off with your dumb shit. Hopefully they overattack and then I can set my 10 stack and then go bump, 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 bump.
Down is a good deed. And if your good deeds outweigh your bad deeds when you go to paradise, well, I mean, that will get you into paradise. If your good deeds are greater than your bad deeds. Not every single time. There may be exceptions if a person is like absolutely a vile, volatile human being. But the whole point of it is that spirituality, the lacking of intention, as the apostle St. Paul tells us, you know, don't always focus on the outward circumcision, but look at the circumcision on the inside. So rather than just the circumcision of the flesh, how about the circumcision of the heart? And he talks about this because Jesus just resurrected and went to heaven. And already a couple decades later, and even sooner than that, people are going back and going, okay, that's great. Jesus saved us all. But I got to do all these weird laws or else God won't save me. And Paul is sitting there wondering, but aren't you contradicting yourself? You're saying Jesus saved you, but it's not enough because you have to do these other laws. And so for Christianity, especially Orthodoxy, we take a lot of the moral example from the Old Testament. It's not completely disregarded. We don't follow the ritual laws because we don't believe these laws can save you in and of themselves. We believe Christ saves us, but we live a holy life so that we can attain a further path toward God and to reach paradise. But Christ is the ultimate savior. That's it. These laws by themselves are not going to save you. And so that's why Paul says that Jesus is a stumbling block both to the pagan Greeks who relied only on philosophy and wisdom, and on the Jews who were obsessed with the laws. He said Jesus is a stumbling block to them because it refutes their ideas that you have to run around in circles a certain number of times in order to get to heaven. And when I say that, you look at Islam, there are rules of hygiene, and many of them, okay, they make some sense. You wash before you pray. That's fine. People know the surface level laws, but there's other ones, such as washing a bowl a certain number of times.
Shit.
It's the only way to properly follow the sunnah. So the sunnah is following what Muhammad did.
Hopefully he doesn't get a 10. Hopefully he does not get a 10. Let's see what he gets. Gets an 8. And he split. He should not have split like that. Oh no, that was from the trade, probably. He doesn't know how to kill him. Sick. Now purple breaks. Yep. Ooh, he might take him all the way out of this place.
And that's what the Sunni Muslims do. They follow it.
Or does he break me? No, if he was to break me, he would put there.
The entire Hadith collection, or the ones that they consider to be authentic. And so they're mimicking this guy, and that's a whole other issue entirely. But they're mimicking this guy in everything, not just out of admiration, but because the Quran says obey God and the messenger. So they have to obey this guy and do all of his laws, or you're not following that command from the Quran. Yeah. And so another thing that I found interesting, in addition to just the idea of ritualism and the idea of legalism, to go back to what St. Paul was saying, is that the intention is not really there. So yeah, there is a prayer that Muslims do before praying where it's optional, where they give their intent. And they say, okay, God, I intend to do this prayer for so-and-so reasons. But even that, ironically, even that is not really giving your intent, because you're just doing a robotic ritual stating your intent. But inward in your heart.
If you're a teenage girl living almost anywhere in rural Africa, your ability to go to school is entirely dependent on where you go to find water. It is absolutely not fair, but for women and girls, it is often the very first priority every single day. I'm currently in southern Malawi with my new friends, Betha and Bethia, and we're walking to their water source. Both Betha and Bethia are averaging 2 days a week at school because of this responsibility. Taxi!
You may not have a good intention. And so they lack the idea that there is an intention inside and that a change inward is more important than outward. Jesus tells us when you fast, anoint your head, wash your hair, look healthy. Don't be walking around with your clothes torn and you look all miserable so people can go, oh, he's fasting, how admirable of him. Or, when you donate, go and do it secretly. Don't announce, guys, I'm giving my zakat. That's the charity, the concept of charity. And then there's also when you pray, go secretly into your room, shut the door, and pray to God. That's what Christ tells us. But in Islam and Judaism, these concepts are not really there at all because they don't have the teachings of Christ. So all they have is we have the one God, we have to pray to him. But you'll find, especially in Islam, that sometimes they take a lot of pride in these prayers. I've had Muslim friends announce to me like 5 times in the 30-minute span that they have to get up and pray. Just go do it. I don't need to know. My grandmother, she went to a Muslim friend's house, Lebanese as well. And in the middle of a conversation, he just gets up and starts doing all of his prostrations and praying, like in the middle of the dining room. Whereas the Christian concept is go to your private place and pray. It's not really anybody else's business unless we're in liturgy. You're not going to gain points from your peers, and their points don't even matter compared to the judgment that you receive from Christ. So those are, in terms of spirituality, those are the things that are extremely important. And then again, there's a long list of laws that are very similar compared to Islam and Judaism.
What the fuck?
Divorces and many other things. But I do, if you don't mind, I want to read a couple of passages that are strikingly similar.
Oh no.
So in the Quran,
that was no good. I can't believe that I did that. Fuck. Is he gonna retaliate? No. Sick.
Verse 32, so that's chapter 5, verse 32. It states,
I'm still ahead in
"That is why we
troops.
ordained for the children of Israel that whoever takes a life, unless as a punishment for murder or mischief in the land, it will be as if they killed all of humanity. And whoever saves a life, it will be as if they saved all of humanity." Then if we look at the Sanhedrin from the Babylonian Talmud, there's also other translations that are slightly different, but you get the idea that the Quran, which is not just a book written by Muhammad, it's the authentic revelation of God, says if you kill someone, it's as if you kill all of humanity. If you save someone, it's as if you save all of humanity. And the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, says the exact same thing, almost word for word. The issue with this is that the Talmud came first. The Talmud is not considered, even by Islam's own standards, to be the Word of God, because it came after the Torah, which is considered the Old Testament. The whole thing is called the Torah, or Al-Tawrat in Islam, or the Injil, which is the Gospel for the Christians. Those are the only 2 holy books that are considered part of the revelation of God. The Talmud is never mentioned in the Quran, and yet these verses are copied almost word for word from it. I always wear Riyadh al-Salihin 419, Abu Huraira, may Allah be pleased with him, this is a hadith reported, I heard the Messenger of Allah saying, when Allah created the creature, he wrote in the book, which is with him over his throne, verily my mercy prevailed over my wrath. So God, this is a different one, this is in a hadith, not the Quran. And in the hadith it says, in the throne in heaven, God has a verse over his throne, so above him, verily my mercy prevailed over my wrath. But then we have in a Jewish book, which again I'll share the sources with you. The Gemara asks, "What does God pray?" Rav Zutra Bartovia said that Rav said, God says, "May it be my will that my mercy will overcome my anger." So in the Jewish source, my mercy will overcome my anger, and in the Hadith, above the very throne of God, verily my mercy prevailed over my wrath, which is pretty much the same concept. So you can see those are 2 examples, and I'm sure there are more, of almost exact copying from the Talmud, which again, people may say, well,
I was going to go for that at my next turn.
Islam teaches? No, because the Talmud is not one of the revelations given to the people prior to the rise of Islam. So before Muhammad, the only books that are considered revelation, like I said, are the Torah, the Old Testament, and the Injil, the Gospels that Jesus had. That's it. There is no Talmud. There is no sacred Talmud in Islam, and yet it still copies just about word for word what those passages say. And the problem with the first one that I read was that it's from the Quran itself, which is supposed to be the eternal word of God. So God, before all of time, before all of creation, decides, I'm going to write these verses because I know in the future, at some point, some random Jews are going to write a book without my authority, and in that book, they're going to write something that is going to be the exact copy of what I have over this throne. And it's so important, so integral, that I have to put it into the Quran, my eternal word, that is not me, but also not apart from me. I wrote this before the entire cosmos was created in Islamic theology. That's what God did. And yet, it's not even from his own revelation. It's from what some Jews decided was the wisdom of God. So that doesn't really make any sense. And the Hadith is not much better, even though it's not an uncreated, timeless piece. It's copying my mercies prevailed over my wrath. So those are two examples, right? Just these verses, which of course are very striking and troubling. It's also the fact that there are other parts that, like you said, it shows up in the 6th century, invasions in the 7th century, the rise of Islam. It all
he gonna
seems
attack
to be
the
very
20?
focused on this one region.
Yes!
Which again,
that means that I get the that means I get that. Boom. Trade now. Boom. And now we go in. Ah, damn it.
is okay if you're looking at it from the Jewish, historical Jewish, or the Christian mindset, which is, oh, these are books written by men. They're going to have their own context, their own flaws personally, but the Holy Spirit is going to move them to infallibly write these great holy scriptures, right? That's what we believe. But it's still men at the end of the day. So Paul, he can't be time traveling into Soviet Russia. He's going to write from the perspective.
There we go. Let's see what they were. Intermediate, novice, yeah. I didn't think that any of them were good.
Perspective of someone who is in the 1st century in a Hellenistic Jewish.
Damn, what the fuck?
And that is what he writes.
Is that because of that one loss that I had? It dropped me that much?
But the problem that I find in Islam is that, specifically with Quran, everything seems to be pertaining to things that happen in a very small area of the world. Arabia is a large, vast space, but most of everything that occurs in the revelation that Muhammad gives to all of his companions and the people who follow him just occurs in the Hijaz region, which is the strip of western Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
That is where the vast majority of everything happens. And there are groups that are mentioned that no longer exist. For example, the Quran says that the Jews call Ezra the son of God, and yet there are no Jews today who do. Furthermore, it says that the Christians worship Mary as a goddess.
All right.
And some Muslims will say, well, Catholics and Orthodox pray to Mary. But it clearly is saying worship as a goddess. And there's even a verse in the Quran, in that very same surah that I read from, where apparently on Judgment Day, God is going to ask Jesus, did you take yourself and your mother as gods? So not a saint. Because Islam is actually aware, maybe not the Quran,
Are they going to
but later
put themselves in
books and later scholarly work from them, they're aware of what
North
saintly
America?
veneration is. There actually are saints in some parts of Sunni Islam.
Okay.
It's not the exact same as what we have, but they know the difference between venerating and worship. And yet, God still asks Jesus on the end times, did you take yourself?
Unlike what I'm about to do with my husband, mood is totally legal.
Totally legal?
What the fuck?
Legal.
Ew. What the
With Mood
fuck is
Cannabis,
this?
We have more fun more often.
Ooh la la!
Ah, mais oui.
Très bien!
What the fuck is this?
Mood is our sexy little secret. It ships discreetly right.
Yeah, I don't
Among the
like it.
numerous situations in which you might find yourself throughout history, being in the pilot's seat of a Mitsubishi A6M0 plane in 1945
Mitsubishi?
Japan
What the
is
fuck? I didn't know that they were
undoubtedly one of the
Mitsubishi.
least enviable.
That's
You'd
fucking
be
crazy.
expected to die, obviously, while trying your best to crash into an enemy vessel that would be trying its absolute best to take you down. Truth be told, being a kamikaze pilot was a cruel fate, and it was one of those cases where there were no winners involved. But how did the Japanese get to the point of employing such extreme tactics? And what was it like to be a kamikaze pilot? Well, if there's one thing that's consistent about the Japanese across their long and storied history, it's that they take everything very seriously, especially war. Lest we forget, Japanese feudalism only ended in 1871.
Huh.
Until then, Japanese society was dominated by its warrior class, the samurai, who wielded immense power and sometimes acted more like independent warlords than sworn vassals. Their
Now they
nebulous and
boom.
always evolving moral code, Bushido, placed the
Bushido,
utmost
yeah.
importance on
On
courage and
honor.
self-sacrifice. And while the samurai eventually went the way of the dodo, their spirit remained. When the last Japanese feudal government was overthrown and the emperor regained his full autocratic glory, his first task was to modernize Japan so that it could rival the industrialized empires of the West. To that end, he invited foreign military advisors, notably the French, to help reorganize the feudal samurai remnants into a proper standing army. By that point, the samurai were a badly outdated fighting force, yet their discipline was a valuable asset. So, to harness it, Japan undertook a massive cultural re-education campaign. The Bushido Code of Old was rewritten to promote loyalty to the emperor above all else. And it was taught not just to soldiers, but to all Japanese, both in school and across all media. Japanese religion was co-opted as well. Using the same technique, the emperor organized the previously loose folklore traditions of Shintoism into a government-run apparatus that exalted the emperor's divine nature. With an almost fanatical loyalty to their emperor, the new Japanese military became among the fiercest in Asia, and before long it was put to use against rivals, first in taking Korea and Taiwan from the Chinese, and then in conquering the southern half of Sakhalin Island, and absolutely humiliating the Russians. The Japanese continued their string of victories, but like all successful militaristic empires, they eventually got too cocky and decided to take on the United States. It's a classic mistake. We've all been there. Now, credit where credit is due. The Japanese put up a good fight in the air, especially during the early stages of the war. Their planes were of a good quality, and their pilots were well trained, averaging an impressive 12-to-1 kill ratio in early 1942. But America's insurmountable industrial advantage eventually tilted the scales, and by 1944, Japanese resource shortages and continued American radar innovations had made traditional air attacks impractical. What isn't impractical, though, is the intricate combat simulation by our dear friends over at War Thunder. By far the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, featuring an impressive lineup of over 2,000 planes, tanks, ships, and helicopters. War Thunder lets you experience more than a century of warfare in unparalleled detail. Yes, and in War Thunder, each vehicle is modeled in its... But where were we? Ah yes, the summer of 1944. The Japanese leadership came together to figure out how to dominate their enemies. They did the maths, and it turned out that it would be more efficient for them to use their now outdated aircraft as suicide bombs. In a very poetically Japanese fashion, they called this new strategy kamikaze.
Kamikaze.
Or divine wind, evoking the furious typhoons that saved Japan from the Mongol invasions of Kublai Khan. The first kamikaze mission was organized in October 1944 in the Philippines, towards which the US Navy was rapidly sailing. 24 student pilots were chosen for the grim task. All volunteered eagerly by raising both hands. The leader of this new unit was the 23-year-old Yukio Seki, the most promising student. And here he is, on the far left, drinking a ceremonial toast of water as a farewell. The Americans arrived near the island of Leyte on the 23rd of October, initiating what would turn into the largest naval battle in history. However, due to heavy cloud cover, the first kamikaze mission could only fly 2 days later. On the morning of the 25th of October, Yukio and his 4 fellow pilots took off, each carrying a 550-pound bomb. 3 were shot down by anti-aircraft fire, while 1 crashed into the flight deck of a carrier without killing anyone. It was only Yukio who succeeded in his mission. He struck a US carrier's bomb magazine, triggering its destruction and the deaths of 133 men. Astonishingly, we have a photo of the event. Here it is, the very first successful kamikaze attack. The battle itself was a disaster for Japan. It suffered its greatest ever loss of ships and men in combat, effectively ending the existence of the Japanese Navy. And yet, in the shadow of defeat, the Japanese saw the promise of the successful kamikaze strikes as a blueprint for their resistance. The kamikaze program was expanded rapidly.
Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to move that 3 into...
30 days to allow for faster turnover. Supposedly, volunteers outnumbered available aircraft 2 to 1, with some pilots having already pre-composed their death poems, a lovely samurai tradition, before their training had even begun. To utilize the enthusiasm of its citizens, Japan built special kamikaze aircraft designed with minimal defenses and jettisonable landing gears. All in all, by the end of the war, nearly 4,000 kamikaze pilots would embark on their one-way missions, achieving a success rate of around...
Yeah. What's up?
Is Jay coming back?
I don't know. Not right now. But she will eventually. Why?
I said when.
I don't know. Oh, this motherfucker. Are you still playing on your computer?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. What are you doing?
What?
I said, what are you doing?
I'm not my feet hurt. It's dark outside already.
Around 20%, which might not sound like a lot, but it was definitely much higher than the success rate of their regular air missions from before. Now, not all of those missions ended up with the pilot's death, of course. Sometimes bad weather, no targets, or even simple human fear could lead to a mission abort. For those survivors, however, their lives may as well have been over.
There we go, sick.
The Japanese were infamous in their social stigmatization of cowardice. There are many stories out there of survivors who were shunned by their families and communities. One particularly unfortunate pilot was supposedly shot after aborting his mission 9 times. So, as I said, there was no winning if you were a kamikaze pilot. And the only good to come out of this whole ordeal was the beautiful, if not somber, collection of poetry, which I've conveniently linked in the description below. There, you will also find the link to download War Thunder, which you can play now for free. And for a limited time, you can claim all those delicious sign-up rewards as well. A big thank you to all of our wonderful patrons. We are forever in your debt. And, as always, stay tuned for the next poetically self-destructive episode of Side.
It's time for you to get your reading superpowered. So stop straining your eyes and start listening.
For a lot of people, 2023 was not a good year. Old wars stagnated and frontlines ground to a halt, whilst new wars and conflicts sprang up across the globe. Technology marched forward whilst benefiting the few, and everything got more expensive as world economies teetered on recession. But obviously, it wasn't all terrible. And some of the failures of this year are lessons for the future, something which has been most evident in the film business. While there have been a few standout films from Hollywood, 2023 has otherwise been awful for the big studios. It was completely packed of unoriginal, bloated and soulless films, so many that audiences just stopped watching. Even the golden geese that Hollywood has relied on for decades stopped laying. After smashing franchise records just a year ago with Mission Impossible Fallout, Tom Cruise failed to rescue Warner Bros. From the brink. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, despite soaking up nearly $300 million in production alone, only delivered under double of that. And when you take away marketing costs, which often equal the budget, as well as the cut the cinemas take, then a $566 million worldwide box office means they lost hundreds of millions. The DC universe had some hilariously poor performances this year as well. The Flash opened as one of the worst superhero films we've seen in a long time. And despite Batman's presence, it was a laughingstock that lost hundreds of millions, while Shazam 2 barely even made.
Hopefully they don't fucking boom into me. I don't think that they will. Because they don't seem like an over-attacker, but... you can never be too sure. Ooh! Really? Are they going to? No. Oh, okay, sweet.
made an impact. Had they not released Barbie this year, Warner Bros. Would be in deep trouble by now. Maybe even as much trouble as Disney is in right now. You see, as we all know, Marvel was hit especially hard by sequel fatigue, stumbling early with Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. What could have been an easy $500 million in the bank for Disney blew up in their face. Cheap and unpolished special effects, combined with the most stale ideas possible, meant it never had a chance. But this was only the beginning for Disney. The forgettable series Secret World was unnoticed and ignored, despite a $200 million budget behind it. Their next release, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, was the best of a bad bunch, but still performed modestly compared to previous installments. It wasn't a coincidence that the Marvel film that was the most original and unique was the only real winner. But from there, it only got worse. The Marvels, their next MCU release, was plagued by reshoots, rewrites, and production chaos. VFX artists barely had any time to work on the visuals under Marvel's shortening production cycles as well. Captain Marvel's character had always been weak. Her first solo film had only been kept afloat by having the lucky position of falling between Infinity War and Endgame. But when the sequel was left to fend for itself, it didn't even make back its production budget. And with their money printing machine suddenly coming to a halt, the rest of Disney was left to pick up the pieces. In short, they failed miserably. Their constant meddling and micromanagement of Pixar led to Elemental getting one of the worst opening weekends in Pixar's history. Their attempt at an Indiana Jones reboot fell completely flat on its face, and Little Mermaid didn't live up to its roots either. Wish, one of their own animated films...
Well, everyone knew that Little Mermaid wasn't gonna fucking be good.
was just as much of a disappointment. Between Ant-Man, Secret Invasion, Indiana Jones, and The Little Mermaid, Disney lost over $1 billion, and they've been left with nothing but regrets going into the next year. This year, the constant cycle of sequels and remakes finally brought down Hollywood's house of cards. $300 million franchise films barely made a dent, whilst innovative and creative films almost overperformed for lack of competition. And whilst it's been a rough year for blockbuster films in general, the few successes will hopefully push the studios in the right direction again. If they don't wake up and smell the coffee, they could be in for an even worse 2024. But one thing that film does have going for it is that it's relatively sheltered from the disruptive effects of the online world. News and TV haven't been so fortunate, getting replaced by online content and social media at the fastest pace yet. But what might have led to a more free and open society has instead only worsened the existing divisions in society. On the surface, social media companies have been extending and tightening their grip over their users. Reddit, once considered one of the last bastions of free speech, has fallen even further into a world of corporate safe spaces and censored discussion. Their major gamble was to effectively shut down third-party apps and other ways to use the site without their watchful eyes on your data. In May of 2023, they announced that they were locking out third-party developers from their code unless they paid insanely high fees for the pleasure.
Reddit is making a change saying, if you want to use our data for your own app, there are a lot of third-party Reddit apps out there, very popular ones in fact, that just kind of suck up the data from Reddit and put it out on their own app. There used to be Twitter apps like this too.
Exactly.
And because of this change, those apps are going to have...
When it comes to fixing your car, shop CarParts.com. You'll find the right parts fast, and along with great savings, we guarantee your parts will fit perfectly. Get the right parts right now at CarParts.com.
Montana homeowners, you're going to want to check this out. As of August 2022, the federal government did something that's going to change how you view your finances. If you pay over $57 a month on your electric bill and you own your home, you could qualify for the
have to start paying for access to that data.
Apollo, one of the most popular, was asked for $20 million a year to continue operating. It was a cynical move designed to put people on the official app. That way they could design their adverts to blend in as much as possible with the actual content. And the more people who give them the same attention as real content, the more money Reddit makes selling the spots. And it's safe to say that people weren't happy, and a majority of popular subreddits went on strike. But it didn't really last long. All Reddit had to do was wait out the 24-hour outrage cycle, deal with a few posts about spares, and get right back to making money. And it turns out most social media addicts weren't capable of tuning out for longer than 3 days. On top of that, the blackout gave Reddit an excuse to go after the last few mods on the site that will actually stand up to them past a token amount of pushback. troublesome mods were rejected, whilst power mods were given even more power to tamper with what people were saying. Along with the adverts and the app changes came as much monetization as possible. Reddit Gold used to be one of the only ways the website stayed afloat, letting people give an ultimately meaningless reward to people who did a good thing. It was mostly harmless and a nice alternative to just throwing the money away. With the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and general drought in venture capitalist billions, tech businesses have been squeezing their users as much as possible. It's led to other social media companies and tech giants following exactly the same script that Reddit's been using. They've monetized as much as possible, and one new development is Meta's plan to introduce an ad-free subscription service for their platforms in Europe. It came after the EU demanded that users actually be given an option to reject tracking and invasive data theft, so Meta responded by offering a paid service for people to avoid it.
Regulators and courts in Europe have told Meta they need to give people a real choice.
And whilst they might say it's to appease the EU, pulling the wool over their eyes would just be a happy side effect. Instead, it's part of a coming push to monetize and sell the very thing they've been taking from us all this time: privacy. That's if the service actually protects your privacy at all, which remains to be seen. But the number one way that these companies make their money is through engagement. All the expensive digital stickers and monthly fees don't mean a thing if you can't keep people on the app. That's where the algorithms come in. TikTok has been ahead of the curve for quite some time, using short-form content and promoting divisive topics to maximize engagement as much as possible. And it's created a generation of addicts that can't watch a 20-second clip of something if it doesn't have flashing lights, subway surfers, and an AI voice to spoon-feed what's going on right in front of you. Other companies have been catching up though, and it's made society more divided than ever. Global issues and politics are shortened down and distilled into two opposing viewpoints. Troll farms and bot accounts push both sides incessantly, only adding to the maelstrom. The audience gets split into two echo chambers who only see evidence for their points and strawmans of their opponents. And apart from making the internet a much worse place to exist, it simply makes society weaker. A divided nation is paralyzed, and democracies are more divided than ever. And with everyone fighting their own civil wars online, it lets corrupt and greedy politicians take even more advantage than they already are. But it also leaves us unable to properly respond to the growing threats that we've seen unfold over the past year. It's not something that's lost.
I was about to say that this guy's good if he was about to go boom. I was like, oh, he's good, but no, I don't think so.
Billionaires behind the modern outrage machine. In fact, Zuckerberg, one of the principal architects of social media, has spent a sizable portion of his vast wealth building his own luxury survival bunker in Hawaii. Over the course of a decade, the billionaire has spent $270 million on a
I mean, if I was that rich, I would build a survival bunker too, so. Do they attack? No, they don't attack.
restricted compound of mansions and underground facilities, designed for decadence and self-sufficiency. It's ironic that these people who always talk about progress and a brighter future are spending so much on a plan B when it all collapses. And whilst the rich and powerful have been building their own walls and bunkers, much of the world has fallen into chaos. And we can't forget that the world moved one step closer to war this year. Whilst the Ukrainian flag graced millions of Facebook profiles last year, it's fallen off.
Yeah, that was cringe as fuck, bro.
The front pages, which only benefits Putin. Without air superiority and a flood of Western aid, Ukraine stands little chance of breaking the deadlock. UK and US politicians looking to get re-elected next year won't be likely to announce massive boosts in aid to Ukraine. It's an awful catch-22. That means the country will be spending over 20% of their GDP on defense next year. Russia, meanwhile, only spent around 6.4% of their GDP this year on the military. Still a huge proportion, but nowhere near what Ukraine has had to give up. It takes a long time for economic pressure to end an ongoing war. Often it doesn't happen at all. But if this war of attrition continues, then the tragic depletion of Ukraine's families and resources will carry on. Of course, the war in Ukraine isn't the only war that's going to carry on into the next year. The war in Gaza is also unlikely to end anytime soon. While peace talks are ongoing, the conflict is defined by bitterness that goes back to colonial times, on top of ongoing ethnic tensions. Tensions that have only been amplified in the online discussion and content surrounding the war, something that social media companies are pretty powerless to really prevent. It's incredibly difficult to moderate content that reflects an ever-changing landscape of truth and propaganda, especially when there's so much of it in multiple different languages. It's no surprise that tons of social media platforms have pretty much given up. TikTok even removed the button their moderators were using to flag suspicious or inflammatory content that's not in their own language. Instead, they were told to put it through Google Translate. But it isn't really a problem that so
It's windproof. Do you know what I mean, guys? This is the Bearskin Tactical Hoodie. I wasn't expecting much, to tell you the truth, but I was surprised. It came in like 2 days from when I received the email. This is heavy. And you know, you see these hoodies on the market and they're lightweight and there's not a lot to them. It seems really well made, I have to say. It's got very decent Velcro on your cuffs. Loads of pockets. Pockets on the arms, another arm pouch. Very good zips, chest pocket, and on the inside you actually have a reverse of that chest pocket. We have another slit pocket down here for your water bottles and stuff, another little pocket here, and on the other side, guys. A lot of pockets. It is a warm jacket, I have to say. You have a poacher's pocket on the back. I'm impressed with it. It's decent. It's absolutely decent. I don't see any issues with it. Drawstrings on the waist as well. We have a storm flap over the zip. It's not a bad fleece. Guys, first look. You ready for the 360? 360. I do feel like an operator now. I do feel like I could put on some sort of low-profile chest rake.
social media platforms are incentivized to solve though. Controversial and provoking content is exactly what they want because anger leads to engagement and therefore more profits. The drawback of course is that people absorb the propaganda and it changes how they think. Subtly and without their knowledge, they pick up the language itself of division and conflict, and it changes how people think and how they react to the world around them. It's another case where modern technology has only really added problems to the world rather than solving them. And whilst progressing faster than ever, tons of big tech's innovations and products have only really served to uproot and displace the old industries. Whilst the shift lined the pockets of tech CEOs, companies like Uber and Airbnb have generally
Yes, I only get a 4 stack. What do I have here? Alright, I could get a... Why would they have broken my the alliance with me. That
Generally
was
made
just
things
dumb
worse for
for
everyone
them.
else, both the people actually doing the work as well as the customers. Virtual reality and augmented reality so far hasn't really made the push into the mainstream that we might have expected 5 years ago, but this year did have some huge breakthroughs. On the Lex Freeman podcast, we got a small window into what that future might look like when they conducted the interview entirely through the metaverse. There were some limitations, of course. The realistic avatars only depicted the head and shoulders, and before the interview, there was this huge scanning process to set it all up, but otherwise the effect was incredibly realistic. This technology really will change society, but it will take a long time before this happens. Then again, the announcement of the Apple Vision Pro was what really defined the year. The device, whilst ludicrously expensive, represents a massive step towards a digital reality. You see, Meta's been pushing VR for years now without massive success, but Apple finally getting into the game means they're finally serious about its short-term potential. The device, slated to come out early next year, will put the digital world right in front of people's eyes. Through eye tracking and outward camera,
Are they gonna come and try to attack me again? They don't try to break. What the fuck? Fuck this guy.
cameras, the user can both see what's around them as well as a digital overlay. Apps and games can exist layered on top of the real world, rather than in an entirely generated digital world. It's this augmented reality that's going to be the defining feature, both for consumers and for Apple. You can imagine its uses in real life. Information about the world around you will appear at your fingertips. AI assistants can tell you which bus will be the fastest. Which roads to take to avoid traffic, and overlay everything else a smartphone can do. Eventually it could even automatically translate language or give you subtitles in real time. But as well as the limitless possibilities, it means that the digital world will be even more intermingled with your life. AR will remove those last few seconds of time between the impulse to follow the distraction and getting the dopamine reward. This final wall between us and the digital world is crucial. Instead of having adverts and notifications appear on your phone, they will appear directly.
I stopped at the treasure chest on my, like I told you, and Bill was there, and I told him about my new car and everything, and he's like, bro, you bought it from them, they're the fucking shiftiest people in town. And then he's like telling me I overpaid for it, and then they gave me bald tires, and he's just stressing me the fuck out about it. He's like, yeah, you way overpaid for that car, and Nissan Maximas aren't good cars, and he's like, you have 72 hours to return it, and I'm gonna fucking...
They are. I looked it up. They seem like they're decent cars.
Yeah, and he called Bill Rundle, and I got an 8%.
Who's
like
Bill Rundle?
He's a customer that used to work there, but he owns a couple of dealerships here in town.
Oh.
And so, but he's like, with a 730 credit score, you could have walked into the dealership and got finance for any car you wanted for 2% interest rate. And I was like, well, I don't fucking know that.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I didn't want a $20,000 car or more,
Yeah. Who's upstairs? Is your mom supposed to be here soon?
Hello?
I hear they like
being the neighbors.
Yeah, maybe.
No, they just.
Hello? It's gotta be the neighbors.
Yeah.
They just came home. I hear them pull out.
But now I'm just stressed about it. And he says he called Bill Rundle and he's having to do a Carfax on it. And everything. And I don't fucking know. Just stress me the fuck out.
Yeah. It's fine, babe.
Like, percentage rate's 8 fucking percent. And now,
Yeah.
and I just got car insurance on it today while I was gone. Guess how much my fucking car insurance is gonna be for this car?
But maybe he was also thinking of back in the day how much car.
Yeah, but
how
he's
much
sold cars for 10 years. He still keeps up with it. He buys and sells cars all the time still because he's a car guy.
Yeah.
And he said, and then I didn't even tell him my percentage rate. He would have fucking shit his pants at how much my percentage rate was.
Yeah.
And fucking, I was like, nobody else was gonna give me a $5,000 trade-in on my Subaru though. Nobody else was.
Yeah.
Because that thing was a piece of literal shit that was about to die. Oh, I don't fucking know. How long have you been streaming for?
Hour 30.
And he's like, and they didn't even have they didn't even have the decency to give you new tires with this thing. They fucking gave you.
The tires.
Now the
Yeah, the tires weren't that good, but we have to put new tires on it anyways for winter.
Well, tires are cheap anyways. They probably don't
Yeah.
even give snow tires for that car. Nissans have small ass tires.
Yeah.
They're probably fucking gonna be all weather tires. Gabby, quit bumbling down the stairs. I don't know. I'm just fucking stressed out about it now. And I guess I didn't even tell you how much my car insurance is gonna be on that thing.
What?
$300
Really?
Yeah. And if I lowered my deductible, because I was like, my deductible is $2,000 if anything happens to it. If I lowered
Yeah.
my deductible, my payments would have been $450 every fucking month. So
Yeah.
they're like $350 for fucking car insurance every month. So I went from having $400, less than $400 in car shit to pay for every month, to over $500 in car payments and shit. Car insurance and
Because
car payments.
that's how much with
Yeah,
the
because
type of car.
Yeah, $300. I had $200
Really?
insurance. Now I have $350 insurance, and I had a $160 payment. Now I have fucking $230 payment.
Yeah.
How long did you say you've been streaming for?
An hour.
I stopped at the casino.
Oh, fancy.
Put $20 in, won 200, cashed out, given 40, put 40 back in. So I won dinner tonight.
Nice.
Should I call and make a reservation? Or do you even want to go there anymore?
Yeah, I want to go there.
Or we could go to Casa Grandes if you want to go to Casa Grandes.
Yeah.
Just like sit down.
Babe, it's fine. You're worried. With the interest rate, it's probably that he's just thinking about back in the day, back before interest rates went up, because they just went up like 2 months
Well, my
ago.
mom has a lower interest rate than me.
Yeah, but they went
she's-
up.
Yeah.
They went up like just 2 months ago by quite a bit.
Yeah, but how much did my mom pay for her car?
I don't know.
Or my mom, how long ago did my mom get her car?
When we were still over in
Like 4 months ago?
yeah, interest rates went up a shitload
8% though,
in the
it's
last 2 months. They went up a shitload because of it, and them trying to counter
Yeah.
out the
But-
inflation.
But 2 years ago, I had a 3% interest rate. Do you really think it went up that much?
Yeah.
5%?
Yeah, they went up a shitload. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Bill said that I should call him. He's gonna do that Carfax for me with Billy Rundle, and that he's gonna call me tomorrow and he's gonna march in there and get me new tires, which I don't know
Yeah.
if he's actually gonna do. He was
Yeah.
drinking, but I don't fucking know. And he said, and everybody there said that
Vision Pro is
the shittiest place in town.
That is what my dad said after I told him where it was. He was like, "That place I hear is scummy," but I don't know.
Yeah, I wish I would have gotten told all that before I bought the car.
Yeah.
Yeah, why you call me babe?
Can you go?
Sorry. I didn't mean the back calling. Sorry.
So if it's 6 now, what time would it be done?
I don't know. Here in a little bit.
They said 3 hours though, so
When is your mom gonna come get?
I'm going to take her home right now.
Oh, okay.
So a couple more hours?
Yeah.
And did that one her you color?
No.
What?
For what?
I have no idea.
All right. Can you...
a long way away from that. A perfect idea of the product would be a simple pair of glasses with all the same functionality. It's bulky and heavy, meaning it'll be hard to carry around all day, but on top of that, it needs to be plugged into a power source to function. Or you can wear a battery pack that gives it an insane 2 hours of charge before it's dead again. We might not see everyone walking around with VR headsets in the next 6 months, but this year was the first year where it truly became a possibility. It doesn't matter that it's the same cheap Chinese knockoff junk that Wish has been selling for years, people are eating it up anyway. But the low prices of today are an illusion meant to get people hooked. In a year or two, they'll all shoot up once the user base has been established and the initial investments dry up. And this is just like TikTok and all these other Chinese social media apps that have taken over the West in 2023. And as TikTok got grilled and almost banned by the American government, people started waking up to how dangerous China truly is. And Temu just represents that, getting everyone hooked to Chinese products and then extorting the population. But you see, the most insidious part of Temu's operations outside of China is the gamification of consumption. By using loot box systems, minigames with prizes, and spending quotas, they've turned getting people addicted to shopping into a science. People that are vulnerable to these tactics end up spending tons and tons of money on useless junk they don't need. The low prices, flashing colors, and hollow sense of satisfaction make sure they keep coming back for more. This addiction then fuels sweatshops and unethical factories where the Earth's dwindling resources are made into cheap hunks of plastic that break after a few months anyway. Even the corporate staff at Temu's parent company are massively overworked. Former employees have described an atmosphere.
Oh, they are gonna love that one! Just curious, how many more friends are we shopping for? Let's see. Jacob, James, Jayla, Jen. Put me on the J's. Holiday shop like a super gifter at thriftbooks.com.
Montana holds some of the greatest hunting in the country, and much of it occurs on private land. Access to private land is a key part of hunting and wildlife management, but that access is at risk with every gate left open, piece of litter left behind, or torn up ag fields.
Fuck.
Get familiar with Montana's
atmosphere where people work nearly 400 hours every month and where multiple people have been pushed over the edge. And as Temu expands into the West, this work culture will come with it. It's a classic big tech move of taking a vice or addiction that some people have and pushing it to the extreme. The promise of cheap stuff is especially effective with how awful the economy has been over 2023. While a massive crushing recession was narrowly avoided, most world economies stagnated this year as inequality rose to unprecedented levels. For most, it was the year of the cost of living crisis. Energy prices skyrocketed, housing got even more unaffordable, and inflation remained high relative to wages. And the money that everyone lost went up the system into the ruling classes. The world's 25 wealthiest families added an extra 1.5 trillion to their bank accounts. The only question that remains is how much more can they take before the bottom collapses from under them? The world can't bear such a greedy and top-heavy 1% for too long. The scales always correct themselves, at least eventually. That's why throughout 2023, it always felt like we're living on borrowed time. Everywhere you go, there's some massive crisis looming or some society-wide problem that's only getting worse. The world is in for a rough time, but there are some signs of good things to come. While technology seems like the source of most of our problems today, it also holds the promise to solve them tomorrow. Just this December of 2023, scientists at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in California successfully repeated a groundbreaking fusion reaction. While fusion has always seemingly been 20 years away, this is real progress towards nearly unlimited and clean free energy. Other breakthroughs are sure to come, which will significantly change people's lives for the better. Medical technology is in a new renaissance as well. New cancer treatments and technological advances save more lives every day. We don't hear about incremental progress. The way the world gets just a little bit better gets pushed out of our minds by the big breakthroughs or the huge news stories. But it is happening. We're living in a transitional period in human history, and 2023 marked this turning point. And of course, the world is changing so fast that there are going to be massive problems to deal with. But it's these times of—
Why the fuck does this guy keep breaking me?
prices that make the strongest societies. If we can get through this without blowing ourselves up, then with any luck, we'll create a far better world for our children to inherit. 2024 might not be any better than 2023. In fact, it might be.
I might be killed right here.
Eventually, the pendulum will swing back around, and the world will outgrow its current problems. In the meantime, though, at least we'll probably get some better movies to watch.
Sometimes, the front lines are in our own backyard. Big Sky Country. This is the place that we call home. We live here. We work here. We thrive here. And this is why we serve here. No matter the...
Among the numerous situations in which you might find yourself throughout history, being in the pilot seat of a Mitsubishi A6M0 plane in 1945 Japan is undoubtedly one of the least enviable. You'd be expected to die, obviously, while trying your best to crash into an enemy vessel that would be trying its absolute best to take you down. Truth be told.
At 9 p.m. today, Javier Milei came in via national broadcast to announce the nullifying of around 300 laws by necessity and urgency decree. Hey, by the way, Argentina, you guys are... You're completely... I'm very sorry. You're completely... So, good luck with that. Total deregulation of the housing market, including the enabling of landlords to charge rent in US dollars. Oh, sorry, you make your salary in pesos? You have pesos? Well, if you wanna pay rent, you better, and keep in mind, the value of the peso got cut in half the other day. So your rent effectively gets doubled if they keep the proportional worth, you know? Better go down to like an airport or something and exchange your pesos for USD to pay double in rent, assuming they don't raise it. The derogation of protection for land sale, the sale of the complete stock package of all national oil, airlines, and other services to private funds. Bus tickets going from $50 to $500. How? What? How does a bus ticket ever cost that much in any world? This is pesos? Oh, this is in pesos, not dollars? Okay, that makes more sense. Do pesos use the dollar sign? The dollar sign is also the peso sign? Okay, mildly confusing because we were just talking about USD, but okay. All right, you know, signs supposed to remind you message. If you are identified at a protest, you will lose your social welfare plan. Elon Musk's Starlink mentioned by name, likely takeover contract for Argentina's national satellite system. Man, he's actually doing it. He's actually full on doing the like ultimate ANCAP shit. Complete deregulation of the labor market, labor protections, complete oversight and employee indemnity after firing with or without a cause. Milei is pretty much fired against every sector. He aims to derogate a law that gives...
Former Congressman Tom Lanto.
Now, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
Well, a national day of mourning has been declared following the death of former President George H.W. Bush, who died Friday at the age of 94. The post office and other federal agencies are closed for the day. A funeral service for Bush is being held today at the Washington National Cathedral. Former Presidents Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Jimmy Carter, and Bush's son, George W. Bush, will attend, as will President Trump, who was not invited to speak. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush explained why President Trump was not speaking by saying, quote, "It's because we have a unique circumstance here. My brother was president, first dibs, as we used to say." A second funeral will be held on Thursday in Houston, where George H.W. Bush will be buried. Well, we continue now to look back at the legacy of the 41st president. Bush only served one term in the Oval Office, but the blowback from his 1991 invasion of Iraq is still being felt today. Although the Gulf War technically ended in February 1991, the U.S. war on Iraq would continue for decades, first in the form of devastating sanctions, and then in the 2003 invasion launched by George H.W. Bush's son, George W. Bush. Thousands of U.S. troops and contractors remain in Iraq today.
We look back now at a largely forgotten aspect of Bush's war in Iraq, the vast domestic propaganda campaign that occurred in the United States before the invasion began. The story centers on a young Kuwaiti woman named Nayira. On October October 10th, 1990, the 15-year-old girl gave riveting testimony before Congress about the horrors inside Kuwait after Iraq invaded.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Nayira, and I just came out of Kuwait. My sister and my 5-year-old nephew traveled across the desert to safety. There was a baby in Kuwait. They barely escaped when their car was stuck in the... desert sand, and help came from Saudi Arabia. I stayed behind and wanted to do something for my country. The second week after invasion, I volunteered at the Al-Alam Hospital with 12 other women who wanted to help as well. I was the youngest volunteer. The other women were from 20 to 30 years old. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators, took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor. It was horrifying. I could not help but think of my nephew.
Nayira's testimony was rebroadcast across the country and marked a turning point in public opinion on going to war. President George H.W. Bush repeatedly cited her claims.
They had kids in incubators, and they were thrown out of the incubators so that Kuwait could be systematically dismantled.
3 months after Nayira testified, President George H.W. Bush launched the invasion of Iraq. But it turned out Nayira's claims weren't true. No human rights group or news outlet could confirm what she said. It also turned out Nayira was not just any Kuwaiti teenager. She was the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States, Saad Nasir al-Sabah. She had been coached by the public relations firm Hill & Knowlton, which was working for the Kuwaiti government. We're joined now by the journalist who first revealed Nayira's identity, Rick MacArthur, the president and publisher of Harper's Magazine, the author of the book Second Front, Censorship and Propaganda in the 1991 Gulf War. I mean, so, you know, as we said, this is as a turning point. You have this teenager, this girl saying she witnessed this, that Iraqi soldiers came into Kuwait and ripped babies out of Kuwaiti incubators. But she was only referred to as Nayira at the time of the testimony. It wasn't Nayira al-Sabah, so you would know that she is the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador who also testified in that hearing.
Correct. That's all part of the propaganda plan, is to maintain her anonymity, to protect her and her family against reprisals in Kuwait. That was the cover story. But of course, nobody bothered to try to find out who she really was. They just bought the story hook, line, and sinker, even though at the time there were a couple of human rights investigators who were becoming suspicious.
She's going to teach this guy a lesson.
After the war, unfortunately, and was able to...
Of not fucking doing that.
Which was that Hill & Knowlton selected her as a persuasive witness to this atrocity, and it was all part of...
Because what is a threat if you don't follow through with it?
Hussein, at least in the public
it's nothing.
Consciousness, into Adolf Hitler. And the feeling was that they couldn't sell the Gulf War without this. In other words, they had to cheat to win. And that's what interests me about the eulogies for George Bush. He's being presented now as this paragon of kind of WASP respectability and integrity, old school, when in fact he had a violent side to him, a very angry and violent and ruthless side to him. And when you see him doing the propaganda, using the Hill & Knowlton disinformation, you see a side of a politician that's kind of ugly. And we're still, as Juan said, we're still living with the consequences of our having placed troops in Saudi Arabia, because that's what sets off bin Laden finally.
And Rick, in terms of most people, it's been over a quarter century now. Most people don't recall the climate then, but there was significant public opposition to the United States going into Iraq to beat back the invasion of Kuwait. And
I want to watch the rest of this.
The military action was very close, wasn't it? So this was crucial. This testimony.
Precisely. You got to remember, in 1990-91, we're only 15 years after Vietnam, and there's still this very, very bad feeling in the country that's represented in Congress by senators like John Kerry that we were conned into Vietnam. It was an undeclared war, and we weren't going to get conned again into another phony war or a phony pretext. And so it was clear that Bush was going to have to get congressional authorization for liberating Kuwait. And so the vote was going to be very close. It ended up being 52 to 47. It would have been 52 to 48 if Alan Cranston, the senator from California, had come back to Washington to vote. He said he would have voted if it was close. He was undergoing chemotherapy in California.
Now you move that one to outside.
Numerous representatives and senators cited the baby incubator atrocity, which was false. It never happened. As a reason for voting for the Gulf War resolution. In other words,
You put that one right there, put that right there, and then
figure out other ways to get Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. Economic sanctions, negotiations. There was a feeling that this was about oil. It wasn't about principle, even though Bush posed it as a matter of international law. But these people said, finally, look, if he's really Hitler, if he's really capable of having an army that slaughters, and it got to hundreds of babies by the time Amnesty International gave its official seal of approval to the story.
Now that's
it was inflated.
That's
it got
very,
even bigger.
very important about Amnesty International and the role that it played. It wasn't just Naira.
It wasn't just Naira. Human Rights Watch fell for it. They were neutral officially, but Amnesty International actually put the number over 300 babies. There weren't that many incubators in Kuwait City hospitals. Now, if you want to go back over the record, you'll see how badly the media, how badly the press failed in all this.
Well, I remember my newspaper, the New York Daily News, had a front page. They killed the babies, you know, and so the media uncritically accepted this story without any kind of check.
He opened his stack up too. What a dumbass.
International law, how to prevent countries from invading other countries, but we have to draw the line at baby killing. And after the war, it's not just me. It's John Martin who did the really good reporting. He went around to all the hospitals for ABC News and did what a reporter should do. Unfortunately, too late. Interviewed hospital personnel, doctors, did a very thorough job. Nobody could cite one instance of a baby being pulled from an incubator by Iraqi soldiers and killed. There were babies killed because of neglect and because of the American bombardment of Kuwait and of Iraq.
There we go. Boom.
Hospital personnel fled. There were casualties.
Go up through here. Boom. Take that and then take that with the 15.
By being pulled from incubators. It never happened.
Man, dude, both of these guys kind of suck.
As you know, the beginning of a new effort at the...
You could win right now. Purple? What are you doing?
To justify war.
Right, and this is something that hasn't been explored enough. Again, we go back to George Bush's alleged WASP integrity and respectability. Well, he's also the father of George W. Bush, who took the propaganda campaign a couple of steps further with Saddam's fake atomic bomb program. Never happened, never existed in the time that we said it was going on. He may have had ambitions before, but there certainly was no atomic bomb program in 2002, 2003. But we've now gotten so used to debating whether we should go to war or not based on fake news, I'm sorry to quote Donald Trump, but false information, that we don't know how to discuss these subjects anymore. And the war-making power has been taken out of the hands of the people. almost been taken out of the hands of the Congress. It's almost quite, somebody said to me earlier, why did Bush bother to ask Congress for permission to invade Iraq in 1991? Well, back then we were still a little bit more of a constitutionally ruled country. And there was this bitter memory of the Gulf of Tonkin resolution and Vietnam, and the fact that we fought an undeclared war on false pretexts.
We're talking to Rick MacArthur, publisher of Harper's Magazine, author of Second Front, Censorship and Propaganda in the Gulf War. The beginning of your book, Second Front, Censorship and Propaganda in the 1991 Gulf War, is the first chapter is called Cutting the Deal. And you start with a quote of Earl Shores saying, "Some men are pleased to give orders, some men are pleased to take orders." It's really the beginning of the embedding process. Right. And explain this highly unusual meeting, August morning in 1990, 8 days after Iraqi forces invaded Kuwait. Of the four at the time, and you know the media landscape is so different, the four Washington bureau chiefs of the major U.S. television.
What is he doing?
Presenting themselves where?
Well, they present themselves at
Why did he go like that?
Who is the Saudi
I hate when people
fixer
move this
in the
slow.
United States. He's the sort of major domo of everything that happens Saudi related in the United States. And he's the guy that the reporters have to ask for favors. That's who you go to for help, because the White House and the Pentagon had decided from the
Why would you lock that
we're
up?
not gonna have
Oh, I
another
guess
Vietnam.
move through with the
In other words, we're
19.
not going to have another situation where reporters are permitted to go anywhere they want, take pictures of
What is he
corpses,
doing?
take pictures of,
Why wouldn't he have just
burning
killed him?
buildings or
What the
helicopters
fuck?
crashing. We're not going to, because the belief was, the revisionist belief was that we lost Vietnam because the American public was demoralized by all the bad news coming back on CBS Evening News and in Newsweek. So we're not going to let this happen again. And the decision was made to pool reporters and to censure them. In other words, you'd send groups of 5 to the front, wherever the Pentagon decided the front happened to be that day.
Is he just taunting this guy now? Is that why he's...
describe things in theory, but their report would have to be shared with everybody else. There'd be
Playing
no
that way?
competition, and it would have to be vetted by Pentagon censors. So obviously, the American public saw nothing. The reporters were permitted to see nothing, and it was a kind of comical, finally, to see hundreds of reporters in Dhahran, which is where the press center was, recycling censored reports from the front, which showed nothing. There were 2 or 3 honorable reporters, Chris Hedges,
Bro,
Bob
I
Simon of
do not
CBS,
get this. What the fuck is...
who went off the reservation, so to speak, and saw a little bit. But
Just go with that
Susan Sachs,
43 and just go
Did they go to the Saudi ambassador's home, sent there by the Bush administration, even though the Bush administration was sending soldiers into Saudi Arabia? When it came to the press getting permission, they said, you'll have to get permission from Saudi Arabia.
Well,
Is this person on like their phone or something, I wonder? Because that's the only explanation for why they're moving this slow. Why would they split there? What are you doing? What? Bro.
A way to lobby the Saudis for favors. It was still going to be the Pentagon that decided who got to go where when, but the feeling was among the networks was if we can get Prince Bandar to cut us some, give us some do some favors for us, cut us some slack, maybe he can use his influence with the Bush administration to give us better access than the competition. And this brings us back to the present day. I mean, we're in bed with the Saudi Arabians going back a long way. And the idea of the American media...
Just kill the dude. What is this?
Prince. Well, it's an ugly image. And it also speaks to the hypocrisy of the American media back then and still today about the First Amendment. I mean, there were a group of us that sued the Pentagon. Sidney Schanberg and The Nation and Harper's Magazine, we sued the Pentagon over this. We lost, and over the censorship plan. But for the most part, Catherine Graham, Sulzberger, the heads of the networks, they didn't do anything. That's all in my book also. You can see what they said about it.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. As we look at President George H.W. Bush's legacy when it comes to war, particularly the Iraq War. Juan?
Well, Rick, I wanted to ask you, following up on what we were talking about the agreement of many of the major media companies to go along with the censorship protocols of the Pentagon in the war. Ironically, this was the first live televised war, and those of us who remember the pictures of the bombers hitting different parts of Iraq and Kuwait. So you had this irony of, on the one hand, there was censorship and control. On the other hand, it was a televised war. So the American people got this idea of these precision-guided bombs that the United States was unleashing on the Iraqi forces.
Right. Strictly speaking, it's not the first televised war. You could say Vietnam is the first televised war.
Live televised.
But live televised war, yes, in the sense that you have these long press conferences, if you can call them that, run by Norman Schwarzkopf, the commander of the overall commander of the Allied forces, as they were quaintly called, who turns out to be a brilliant
the coalition.
PR man. And what he understood was it's better to talk over the reporters at the press conference and show pictures in real time if possible. Sometimes they were real time, sometimes they were videotapes, to show what the Army was allegedly doing before anybody could check it out. So he brilliantly, I mean, it looks very old-fashioned. He's got a television set up on the stage in Dhahran, showing allegedly precision-guided precision missiles hitting their targets every time to give people the feeling that the American Army is invincible.
Let's turn to the U.S. military commander in charge of Iraq, you're referring to, General Norman Schwarzkopf. During a news conference January 31st, 1991, he explains how the U.S. has been targeting Iraq's Scud missiles.
Just for the we also attacked and destroyed 3 Scud tells with F-15s, and I feel we preempted a missile attack on Israel last night. Now, I certainly can't say there will be no more Scud launches. You can never say that. But I have a high degree of confidence that we're getting better and better at our ability to find them, and I think this tape speaks for itself in our ability to find them and destroy them.
That's Norman Schwarzkopf, General Norman Schwarzkopf.
Right. And the day before, actually, they showed pictures of them, of the United States Air Force allegedly blowing up Scud missile, mobile Scud missile launchers, because at that point, people were very upset, frightened that the Iraqis were going to hit targets in Israel. They did get a couple of Scuds through the defenses into Israel. So they had to have results. They had to show that they were taking out the Scud missile launchers.
Just wait 1 second.
I guess if
And so they claim to have knocked out 11 of them. After the war, Scott Ritter and Mark Crispin Miller did some good reporting and refuted this, said that no Scud missile launchers were blown up, but the mobile Scud missile launchers. But the point is that in real time, the press, the media, could not challenge anything that was said. Here's the video. Here are the generals with their pointers. How can you argue with this? And there's nobody on the ground, no reporters in the field who can verify anything or contradict anything. It's not easy, even under the freest circumstances in wartime, to confirm or refute what the government says. But there's zero chance in this war. So the American public gets the impression that it's a clean war, a sanitized war. We're hitting every target. One of the great statistics to know is that 93% of the tonnage dropped on Iraq and Kuwait in the Gulf War was conventional dumb bombs, most of them from Vietnam-era B-52s. Only 7% of the tonnage fired were laser-guided missiles, which is what they're talking about here.
That was a bad move.
So it's possible that under George Herbert Walker Bush, that the United States government perfected the propaganda control of media coverage of the war.
Yes, and none of these things are new. In other words, if you go back to World War I, you've got Belgian babies were being bayoneted by the Germans. I mean, it's an old propaganda trick. So killing babies has been used before. But in terms of actual technical sophistication, using the latest media
They don't take it, though?
To subvert democracy and to manipulate people and to make them feel good about the war, ultimately. Schwarzkopf, CENTCOM, Pete Williams at the Pentagon, and the Bush administration, this was the pièce de résistance.
Your final thoughts in the last 30 seconds on the review of President George H.W. Bush's life that we're seeing in the media today.
Well, I'm horrified. There was a column in the Wall Street Journal yesterday by William McGurn, headline George Bush's Wonderful Life, where he literally compares him to George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, which is crazy on its face because George Bailey is a kind of populist. He's opposed to the power of Mr. Potter and his bank and so on and so forth. But George Bush was not a peace-loving guy. I'll never forget George McGovern saying to me, and George McGovern,
we have 15 seconds.
McGovern having been a bomber pilot in World War II, saying, you know, most of us came back from World War II. Most of us who came back from World War II had enough. Bush didn't get enough. Didn't get enough violence.
We're going to have to leave it there. Rick MacArthur, publisher of Harper's Magazine, author of Second Front. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
As the sun set over Washington Monday, President Bush's coffin arrived at the Capitol. A hero's welcome heralded by cannons and a 21-gun salute.
The national religion of the United States is American exceptionalism. And we are now in the midst of a grotesque canonization of one of its imperial saints, George Herbert Walker Bush. Every media outlet in this country, every politician, Democrat and Republican, engaged in collective eulogy based on lies. Lies about who Bush was, lies about his policies, lies about the mass killing he oversaw during his life at the highest levels of power in the United States government. George H.W. Bush was an unrepentant war criminal who spent the overwhelming majority of his life making the world a worse place, a more dangerous place, and he leaves behind a global trail of tears, of bloodshed, death, and destruction. His legacy can be seen in the poverty and corruption of Central and Latin America. It can be seen in the never-ending killing fields of Iraq. It can be seen in the international criminals that he pardoned after Iran-Contra and the systematic violence of the so-called war on drugs. His legacy can be seen in the scourge of AIDS, the presence of a sexual harasser, Clarence Thomas, on the Supreme Court, who...
No, I like Clarence Thomas.
In a sick irony of history, replaced Thurgood Marshall, the first black Supreme Court justice.
I like Clarence Thomas, okay? Don't talk shit about my boy, Clarence Thomas.
And a noble man. George H.W. Bush came from a powerful family. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth to a father who cozied up to the Nazis, desecrated the grave of the indigenous leader Geronimo, and whose businesses contributed to the imperial agenda.
Okay, I don't really give a shit about Geronimo's grave.
Forcing the poor of the world into indenture.
This guy's definitely a fucking libtard.
That George H.W. Bush should be receiving. Instead, we have this.
Throughout his long life, George Bush was admired as a man of decency, modesty, and uncommon achievement.
I just want to get up into heaven, and I don't get there by bragging on myself. My mother told me that years ago.
George Herbert Walker Bush today is being remembered as a great man and as a gentle soul.
The 41st president honored today not just as a statesman, but as a father and neighbor. The Houston Symphony paying tribute to his love of colorful socks.
The U.S. and international news media are engaging in sick propaganda. Leave the stories about how classy he supposedly was, how cool his marriage was, how he built a relationship with Bill Clinton, how much he liked Barack Obama, how he always wore those funny socks. Leave all of that to the family and their private memorials. But for the rest of us, for the rest of the world, we must remember that his incalculable crimes were committed in public, from the highest chambers of power in the most dominant nation in the world. The accounting for his crimes should also be done in public. But no, we're told we have to have respect. We're told that now is not the time to discuss any of this. We're told that we must pretend that he was not a mass murderer with so much blood on his hands. Donald Trump doesn't have enough time left in his life to commit even a fraction of the international crimes that George H.W. Bush carried out during his decade in power at the CIA, as vice president, and ultimately as president. Not even close. Journalists today believe that they're so brave in calling out Trump's lies, in investigating his real estate deals, in probing his associates, and yet none of them have the spine to accurately describe the well-documented, indisputable crimes committed by George H.W. Bush. What we are witnessing is a powerful media class and an elite political class whitewashing the life of a man who used his various positions not to make the world a better place, but to wage unthinkable wars, to undermine democratic movements, to kill innocent people, to orchestrate coups and invasions. And the reason no one talks about these crimes is because it's a sacrilege to do so in the American religion of exceptionalism.
I'll never apologize for the United States of America. Ever. I don't care what the facts are.
When an unarmed black man is shot dead by the police in this country, the media is often flooded with stories about how they were troubled kids, how they had criminal records, or they were drug users, how they had run-ins with the law. The pictures used in these stories are often ones where the men are presented as thugs or as scary. Journalists probe deep into the lives of Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, and Eric Garner.
The jury in the George Zimmerman murder trial is expected to learn today that Trayvon Martin had marijuana in his system when he was shot.
These are the final moments of 18-year-old Michael Brown. So we've taken you inside of this convenience store. We've heard from Ferguson police that they say he was without a doubt involved in what they call a strong arm robbery.
Shortly after the funeral ended, one of several search warrants connected to the investigation became public record.
Oh.
The list of some of the items seized from Botham Jean's apartment, including a small amount of marijuana.
News organizations did everything in their power to smear these black men in death with absolutely no regard for their families or respect for their humanity. If George H.W. Bush was treated the same way as these black men, it would take months of nonstop 24/7 coverage to even begin to describe the tip of the iceberg of the unforgivable deeds that Bush committed. Why? Because he committed his crimes as President of the United States. The nature of his crimes was imperial. He did it with bombs and tanks and invasions and coups. In watching the gross hagiography on display this week, I'm reminded of the quote from Voltaire. It is forbidden to kill, therefore all murderers are punished unless they kill in large numbers and to the sound of trumpets. That is who George Herbert Walker Bush was, a man who killed in large numbers to the sound of trumpets. You want to talk about disrespecting the dead? Let's talk about the 400 people that Bush incinerated in a Baghdad bomb shelter in February of 1991. How does this celebration of their murderer and his sense of humor and funny socks feel to their families? And let us remember the so-called highway of
Does
death.
he kill me?
Bush authorized the mass slaughter of retreating Iraqi military units, bombing thousands of vehicles and killing untold numbers of soldiers in retreat.
And they turned it into a trash heap.
Does he kill me? That's the real question. Or does he go and go ham on fucking Blue? Now he kills me?
Pilots called the 3-mile-long stretch of charred bodies and vehicles the Highway of Death. Initial reports were of tremendous carnage.
Shit!
We all know
I was really hoping against that.
Lied the U.S. into the invasion and occupation of Iraq. It was a lesson that he learned from his dad. In the build-up to the 1991 Gulf War, powerful public relations firms orchestrated a campaign to convince the world that Iraqi soldiers had gone into Kuwaiti hospitals and killed babies in incubators and stabbed pregnant women. This campaign, based entirely on fiction, culminated with a bipartisan congressional hearing supposedly on human rights. It featured a young Kuwaiti girl who fought back tears as she claimed to have been a volunteer at a hospital in Kuwait where she witnessed these atrocities.
While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
Do they do it again?
What the public was not told at that
Shit,
time
they do.
was that this little girl was the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States. This whole thing was orchestrated by powerful American PR firms. This girl had witnessed none of these fake crimes. But the lies were repeated over and over as Bush made his case for war.
They had kids in incubators, and they were thrown out of the incubators so that Kuwait could be systematically dismantled.
Both U.S. wars against Iraq were based on lies, and both were run by presidents named Bush. If you speak honestly about who George H.W. Bush really was, then you, by necessity, will be indicting the history, the politics, the legacy of the United States. If you speak honestly about Bush, then the myth of American exceptionalism is laid bare.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We turn now to look at the life and legacy of George H.W. Bush, the nation's 41st president.
Fuck. Does it break? Does he break me? No. Oh. Let's see what he does. Yes. Podcasts.
President, the father of the 43rd president. President Bush died in Houston on Friday night at the age of 94. His body will lie in state in the Capitol Rotunda from tonight until Wednesday. He'll be buried later this week in Houston. There'll be 2 memorial services, one at the National Cathedral on Wednesday and then one in Houston. Bush was elected president in 1988, becoming the first and only former CIA director to lead the country. From 1981 to 1989, he served as Ronald Reagan's vice president. Over the weekend, the media honored Bush and his legacy, focusing on Bush's years of service, from his time in the Navy during World War II to his call as president for a kinder, gentler America. But the focus of the media's coverage has largely glossed over or even ignored other parts of Bush's legacy, from his expansion of the racist so-called war on drugs to his reluctance to tackle climate change.
There we go.
Saying, quote, "The American way of life is not up for negotiation," unquote. It was also
We might actually
George
get this.
H.W. Bush who nominated and continued supporting future Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, even after Thomas was accused of sexual harassment by Anita Hill. Internationally, the ramifications of Bush's...
Bro, Biden was accused for sexual harassment too, and no one even fucking brings that up. Shit. Shit! Damn it. Damn it. He did it the wrong way. He should have went boom, boom, boom. Now he's got to... Damn it. That's pissing me off, battle.
His foreign policy in the Middle East are still being felt. In 1991, Bush launched the Gulf War.
I was really hoping that that guy wasn't...
Our objectives are clear. Saddam Hussein's
going to
forces
kill me.
will leave Kuwait, will be restored to its rightful place, and Kuwait will once again be free. Iraq will eventually comply with all relevant United Nations resolutions, and then, when peace is restored, it is our hope that Iraq will live as a peaceful and cooperative member of the family of nations, thus enhancing the security and stability of the Gulf. Some may ask, why act now?
The stability of the
Why
Gulf.
not wait? The answer is clear. The world could wait no longer.
Over the next 42 days, U.S. forces devastated the Iraqi civilian infrastructure and killed an unknown number of Iraqi civilians. On February 13, 1991, the U.S. bombed an air raid shelter in the Amaria neighborhood of Baghdad. 408 civilians were killed.
Wow.
Some Iraqi relatives of the dead later sued Bush and his defense secretary, Dick Cheney, for war crimes. While the Gulf War technically ended in February of 1991, the U.S. war on Iraq would continue for decades, first in the form of devastating sanctions, then in the 2003 invasion launched by George H.W. Bush's son, President George W. Bush, the 43rd president. Thousands of U.S. troops and contractors remain in Iraq today. President Bush's invasion of Iraq came just over a year after he sent tens of thousands of troops and hundreds of aircraft into Panama to execute an arrest warrant against its leader, Manuel Noriega, on charges of drug trafficking. General Noriega was once a close ally to Washington on the CIA payroll. During the attack, the U.S. unleashed a force of 24,000 troops equipped with highly sophisticated weaponry and aircraft against a country with an army smaller than the New York City Police Department. An estimated 3,000 Panamanians died in the attack. Last month, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights called on Washington to pay reparations to Panama over what was widely seen as an illegal invasion. In one of his last acts in office, President George H.W. Bush granted pardons to 6 former Reagan officials
What's his plan
who were
here?
involved in the Iran-Contra scandal.
Oh, he's
when the
gonna
Reagan
come in.
administration secretly sold arms to Iran to help
Fuck.
raise money for the Nicaraguan Contras, despite a congressional ban on providing aid to the Contras in Nicaragua. Bush was never held liable for his role in the scandal. The ex-CIA
Okay, maybe
director
not.
claimed he was, quote,
That was what I was
"out of the
hoping
loop,"
that he would do.
even though other participants in a paper trail suggested otherwise. Bush's time in office coincided with the collapse of the Soviet Union. He termed the post-Soviet era the New World Order and was a key architect of neoliberal globalization, setting the stage for, among other things, NAFTA and the WTO. To talk more about the legacy of George H.W. Bush, we're joined by Mehdi Hasan. He's a columnist for The Intercept, host of their Deconstructed podcast. He's also host of Up Front at Al Jazeera English. His most recent piece for The Intercept, The Ignored Legacy of George H.W. Bush, War Crimes, Racism, and Obstruction of Justice. Mehdi, we want to thank you for being with us. Of course, when someone dies, people, and it's certainly in the media when it comes to a U.S. leader, they focus on what they feel was the important, praiseworthy accomplishments of a person. And it's the instinct of all not to speak ill of the dead. But Mehdi Hasan, if you can talk about the significance of the presidency of George H.W. Bush.
I mean, huge significance, Amy, and you're right, not speaking ill of the dead is true, and it's a basic, basic courtesy and decency, but this is not about speaking ill of the dead. This is about evaluating the record of a president of the United States, the 41st president of the United States, one of the most important human beings of the 20th century, technically. And yes, a lot happened on his, 4-year watch. You mentioned a great deal of it in your introduction there. And I think the problem is, I find it astonishing as a Briton living in Washington, D.C., watching cable news on Saturday and seeing this hagiography masquerading as journalism, just talking about what a great guy he was, what a great president he was, what a civil and decent human being he was, ending the Cold War, and his many achievements. He stood up to the NRA, he stood up to AIPAC, he did do some good things. But the idea that you only focus on the positive and you ignore the negatives, especially when the negatives involve the loss of huge amounts of human life, in Iraq, for example, in Panama.
Oh.
It's absurd. It's a dereliction of journalistic duty.
This guy's going for Australia after someone already has it. Sweet. That's good for me. Oh, get your troops out of my bonus, bro. Okay, phew. Now he goes boom. Beautiful. Oh, they're moving into there now. Okay. So now I'm gonna guard on here because this guy seems vicious.
To act as if they're cheerleaders and put, their own whatever patriotism or nationalism ahead of their duty, to really give a full set of facts to the viewers. A first draft of history, Amy. A president is dead. We should look back on George Bush Sr. and say, hold on. This is a president who's being described now as the anti-Trump, right? And yet he did some things which were similar to Trump. You mentioned in your intro the pardoning of the Iran-Contra perpetrators. He pardoned Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger on the eve of his trial. And the independent special counsel at that time, said this was misconduct. He said this was helping cover up the crimes. And today we get all worked up when Trump says, oh, I might pardon Paul Manafort. I think we should hold him to the same accounts we hold other people. The fact that, he was nicer than Trump or less aggressive than his son doesn't change the fact that he has a lot to answer for.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Mehdi Hasan is our guest, a columnist for The Intercept, host of the Deconstructed podcast, also is host of Upfront for Al Jazeera English. You mentioned the Iran-Contra scandal. If you can explain what the Iran-Contra scandal was.
Yeah, so in the 1980s, there was a congressional ban on the United States government supporting the Contra rebels in Nicaragua, which were trying to bring down a communist government in South America. And you had this issue where the Reagan administration decided to sell weapons to Iran, which was supposedly an enemy country at that time fighting Iraq, and use the proceeds from that money to fund the Contras in violation of a congressional ban. There was a massive investigation. It was a huge scandal. Think Russiagate times 10 at the time in the 1980s. Reagan obviously left office without being punished for it. There was a special counsel, Bob Mueller style, which was tasked to look into this. Lawrence Walsh, a former Deputy Attorney General under Eisenhower, I think it was. And when he tried to look into this, he found resistance from Reagan's successor, George H.W. Bush. We're now being told what an honest and transparent man he was. He followed the rule of law, unlike Donald Trump today.
Is he going to attack
and yet at the time, he refused to hand over his diary. Okay. He refused to cooperate with the special counsel. He refused to give an interview.
But he is
Sounds
moving.
familiar, doesn't it, Amy? And then he pardoned the 6 top perpetrators, Elliot Abrams, the neocon, Caspar Weinberger, Reagan's defense secretary.
That is not good for me. You're supposed to...
Which is online. You can go and look at it now. Very, very clearly says that Bush helped perpetrate the cover-up. Bush did not cooperate. And he says, I think, it's the first time a president pardoned someone on the eve of a trial that the president would have had to testify in. That's what Bush Sr. did. So when we're told today, oh, look at the difference between George Bush Sr. and Donald Trump. But when it comes to obstruction of justice, when it comes to cover-up, actually they were more similar than some of the media and some of the journalists would have you believe.
Well, let's turn to the Gulf War. In January of 1991, George H.W. Bush addressed the nation on the invasion of Iraq.
As I report to you, air attacks are underway against military targets in Iraq. We are determined to knock out Saddam Hussein's nuclear bomb potential. Some may ask, why act now? Why not wait? The answer is clear. The world could wait no longer.
That's President George H.W. Bush in January of 1991. Of course, flags were at half-mast in Washington this weekend, as they were in Kuwait. Mehdi Hasan, you remind us of a very important part of the story, the lead up to what took place, and how it was the U.S. responded the way they did to Iraq and Kuwait.
Yes.
Tell that story.
So, you heard the statement from George Bush Sr. Look, let's be very clear. Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait illegally in violation of international law. It was a brutal occupation of Kuwait. No one's denying any of that. But what Bush Sr. told the country was that this came without any warning, without any provocation, when in actual fact his own ambassador at that time in Iraq, the US ambassador April Glaspie, had told Saddam just weeks before the invasion that we in America have no opinion on your border dispute with Kuwait. It was interpreted as a green light. Many historians have suggested that was a green light to Saddam from the Bush administration to invade. After Saddam invaded, we were also told by Bush Sr. that America had to go in to protect Saudi Arabia, because that was coming next. Saddam was about to invade Saudi as well. There were Iraqi troops massing on the border. In fact, one reporter, I think her name is Jean Heller, if I remember correctly, went and bought some private commercial satellite data and found there were no Iraqi troops massing on the border to invade Saudi Arabia. It was another lie, like his son told in run-up to the 2003 invasion. So it was a war built on half-truths, evasions, lies. No one's denying Saddam invaded. But what George Bush told the nation was not the full truth. And even after he went to war, as you mentioned in your introduction, how many civilians were killed? The United States government bombed an air raid shelter in Baghdad. The Amaria shelter killed more than 400 civilians. Human Rights Watch called it a serious violation of the laws of war because the US knew. The US had been told beforehand. The US intel knew that that was a place where civilians were congregating. They didn't just bomb an air raid shelter, Amy. They bombed power stations, electricity generating facilities, food processing plants, flour mills, the civilian infrastructure of Iraq. And this was not collateral damage. Planners from the United States government told the Washington Post, told Barton Gellman in 1991 that they were doing this on purpose so that they would have leverage with a post-war Iraq which would be forced to supplicate in the international arena for foreign assistance. And we know what happened next with the sanctions, with the devastation that came in the 90s and the hundreds of thousands of Iraqi kids who died. That all started on George Bush Sr.'s watch.
Well, I want to go back to the election of George H.W. Bush.
Oh, yes.
During his 1988 presidential bid, his campaign released a now notorious television ad called Weekend Passes.
Bush and Dukakis on crime. Bush supports the death penalty for first-degree murderers. Dukakis not only opposes the death penalty, he allowed first-degree murderers to have weekend passes from prison. One was Willie Horton, who murdered a boy in a robbery, stabbing him 19 times. Despite a life sentence, Horton received 10 weekend passes from prison. Horton fled, kidnapped a young couple, stabbing the man and repeatedly raping his girlfriend. Weekend prison passes. Dukakis on crime.
What the fuck?
That was the ad that Lee Atwater, Roger Ailes and Lee Atwater, top aides to George Bush at the time, would apologize for on his deathbed. Explain how significant this was.
Hugely significant, Amy, and even today in media journalism classes across the country, that ad is taught, that ad is studied. Until Donald Trump came along, until the migrant caravan ad came along, it was considered to be the most racist ad in modern American political history. It was a 1988 election, and George Bush Sr. and his team decided that they were going to tie Michael Dukakis, the Massachusetts liberal, to this black rapist who had been released on a weekend furlough program. I think Atwater, there's a quote from Atwater where he said, "We're going to talk about Willie Horton so much that people are going to think he's Michael Dukakis' running mate." And this was Bush Sr. approved of this campaign. Bush Sr. talked about Willie Horton in press conferences, and he never apologized. He never, Atwater on his deathbed apologized. Bush Sr. never apologized. Roger Stone, Amy, one of the most vile political operatives of our time, close advisor to Donald Trump, former advisor to Richard Nixon, he went up to Atwater and the Bush campaign and said, "You will regret this, because this is a clearly racist ad." When Roger Stone's telling you that you're too racist, you know you've gone too far. And yet, on Saturday, on Sunday, I heard former Bush aides and advisors going on cable news saying he was a thoroughly decent man. He believed in civility. He didn't believe in rancor. He wanted, to unify Americans. And I have two words in response to that: Willie Horton.
In fact, as you quote, Lee Atwater bragged at the time, by the time we're finished, they're going to wonder whether Willie Horton is Dukakis's running mate. And he was talking about a policy that was actually a law in a number of states, including California.
Yes, indeed. I think Reagan had signed off on a similar thing, if I'm not correct. But, you know, it was a deliberate attempt to stoke racial division, to scare white voters into thinking that Michael Dukakis was going to release a bunch of black murderers and rapists who were going to come and kill and rape them. It was vicious. And even recently, Amy, what's so ironic is the same cable news hosts who have been kind of, you know, praising George Bush Sr. to the hilt since Saturday morning. A few weeks ago, they were all referring to Willie Horton when they were condemning Donald Trump's migrant caravan ad. You know, the ad that came out during the midterms about the Democrats let in this murderer, cop killer. We were all reminded of Willie Horton back then, but it seems like we won't make the logical connection, which says that Willie Horton, that ad came from the Bush Sr. campaign, this guy who was supposed to be a throwback to an era of civility and decency, yet he had no problem running this racist election campaign, nor did he have a problem
I don't like how
with
it's
racist drug war.
Let's talk about that drug war. And
they're talking about it in a very liberal way, which is annoying.
Think about your hat and the way it makes people feel, because it incites fear in all those around us. Every person is afraid of that hat. I am afraid of that hat. Keep America great.
I'm afraid of that hat. That's racism.
Today to be joined by the brilliant Gideon Levy.
Cringe,
is
bro.
I would say an extremely courageous, morally courageous journalist. Someone I think a lot of us have been looking to, an Israeli writer for Haaretz. I think a lot of us have been looking through as a kind of source of moral leadership, if you don't mind me saying, Gideon, all the way through this. Moral clarity, those two words, I think, have been, for me, the most important two words since this horror began. And I think moral clarity runs through your work like a stick of rock. So it's great to be able to discuss this with you. Gideon, firstly, can I just ask you something, just in terms of your own position, just so I guess we're kind of clear about where you stand at the moment? Because I've been interviewing lots of Israeli peace activists, for example, who I'm always in awe of. But if you look at the polling, just to show how courageous I think your position is, the polling shows that at the moment the vast majority of people in Israel think there's too little firepower being expended in Gaza. A recent poll suggested most support the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. Now, obviously, Israel was traumatized by the horrors of 7th of October, but these are deeply depressing figures. And I'm just wondering, partly, just the atmosphere at the moment and just how kind of marginalized that leads someone with your kind of moral clarity at the moment.
It's an Israel that I never met such an Israel, and I met all kind of sides of Israel in my long career, but this.
Let's watch this one.
Get their moments in the sun, but they will be in charge. Women will not be in charge. Men will not be in charge.
Based? Wait, no. Men will not be in charge? No, women won't be in charge. That's based.
What makes a man?
Men lead, women follow, bro. Damn, man.
True that. True that.
I think a man should have absolutely no interest in whether he's actually happy.
You were happy your entire childhood. That's your happy days. You're a man. Your responsibility.
Work. 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 When you're trying to be nice as a man, it basically means be more like a girl.
Men that cry and are soft are not attractive.
You're in the position of power. You lead the relationship.
Oh, you're supposed to feed the baby. Oh, you're supposed to get up with the baby as a real daddy. Here's what change diapers. No, that's a lie. That's your wife's job.
How value a man is a man with a lot of women?
Yeah, apparently, yeah.
Never say go into bed. Going to bed is emasculating. Cowards means.
Being nicer for a man in a world that you assert basically gives you a vagina.
Well, if you ask these guys, it seems like they've got an entire manual ready to go. In the past few years, we've seen the stark rise of a certain niche of content dedicated to helping men reach their ultimate potential, to unlock what it means to be a real man. And from their perspective, being real men involves traits vaguely in line with dominance, strength, and status. Achieve these as they see fit, and you may just be an alpha male. The zenith of manhood, the top of the food chain, Mr. Steal Your Girl. He's got what every woman wants and what every man wants to be. But fail to live up to this, and you're flung to the lower rungs of masculinity. Cast, or shall I say cursed, with the role of a beta male. A label that ties the so-called simps and soy boys and vegans together. It's a term that implies your failure to succeed, seduce, and dunk yourself in Ben Franklin's, a guy they believe brings the modern man to shame. These stereotypes have long been a staple of popular entertainment and now social media. But could they still hold weight today? Are men just destined to live life like some 2000s teen movie, forever tied to rigid tropes and cliches around manhood?
What do you mean?
Also, what is
What
it
the
about
fuck
this
is she
hierarchy
talking
that
about?
draws in so much appeal in the first place? And are the current icons of the concept truly the poster boys of alpha men? Or could it be possible this content is just oblivious at best and grifting at worst? Let's find out together.
All the sexual synergy and hunger and anger and frustration and yelling and eating and breathing.
Okay, that's pretty cringe. Whatever the fuck this is. Whatever the fuck that was cringe, bro. What the fuck?
Covering the larger social community this ideology is a part of. And for those who don't know, I'm about to, for better or for worse, force feed y'all some forbidden fruit because we're about to dive into the manosphere.
Here's the plan. You sneak past the guards and grab the treasure. What are you gonna do? I'm gonna shop at thriftbooks.com, but there's millions of books for under $5. Even adventures? Adventures, fantasy, anything. Okay, new plan.
I can just girl talk.
Can you?
Yeah.
Oh.
You guys okay out here? Hey, mama, yeah, we're like, yes, and slay. And over here, like, yeah. Yes, queen.
So as some of you may have guessed, the manosphere is a testosterone-fueled whirlwind of online forums, websites, blogs, and social media groups dedicated to providing men's dating advice, self-improvement tips, and above all else, a guide on what it means to be a real man. Although most of the time, this idea of real men is specifically catered to what straight guys want, and what's termed as hegemonic masculinity, the stereotypical male traits we've upheld as the masculine ideal. In Western or Westernized societies, this is often synonymous to being macho or exhibiting traits such as dominance, aggressiveness, strength, courage, competitiveness, and confidence to some extent. And let's not forget the ability to pull in the babes. It's like if a Michael Bay movie were a man. Of course, none of these traits or behaviors are inherently bad on their own, just want to clarify. But when a lot of these groups and their leading figures, I'll get to them in a minute, are constantly pushing these traits as the be-all, end-all of one's manhood, that's when things strike a nerve. It's as if they're saying, well, if you're not the stereotypical macho man, then are you even a man? Usually, anything remotely feminine to these guys is considered weak or undesirable for men.
If you go watch the movie Barbie, you're 100% a beta. There's no way around it. I don't care if your girlfriend forced you. How about you force her to watch Oppenheimer? Because that's what real alphas will do.
And when these beliefs are drilled into one hard enough through empowering quotes or TikTok rants, it can lead them down a slippery slope of, well, misogyny, and a disdain for the guys who don't exactly fit their narrow view of masculinity. It's no surprise then that a lot of these communities are passionately anti-feminist, believing that feminism is a zero-sum game that has corrupted society, overpowering women at the expense of men, and in the process turning the latter into a mass of weak, lost, and powerless souls. But hey, don't let me tell you.
We cannot deny that feminism is a man-hating ideology. Feminism was forced on women because they knew, the Marxists understood, that it was a means by which they would subvert the power of the men in the society, and through feminism, men grow weak. Feminism isn't just about elevating women, it's about degrading men.
There's no longer this constraint, this restriction on women's sexuality that came
I completely agree with that.
from our faith in God. Then with the sex revolution that started, I think in the 60s, 1960s, there was the birth of the contraceptive pill, and suddenly women now had the possibility of having casual sex without the risk of pregnancy. And women are allowed to sleep around with no problems whatsoever attached to that.
Feminism is great. It's helped men out completely. We're doing so well that now 60% of the college entrants are women, and men have fallen down to 40%. Men are now earning less money on average. Women are starting to out-earn men and are still dying on the job more. Actually, like 99% of job deaths are men. Men occupy prisons. Most people that are homeless are men. Feminism, so good for men.
It is a supremacism movement. It is a gender sex supremacism movement.
If she's allowed to have sex, she may as well pick the best guy for that. Now the dating market has been totally open and even encouraged for women to, like indulge and to sleep around. This means that the majority of guys are not getting any attraction from women. That's going to drastically increase how lonely a lot of guys are.
The cancer on culture that is feminism is to trick women into thinking that they will get their moments in the sun, that they will be in charge. Women will not be in charge. Men will not be in charge. We will all be enslaved and subjugated.
They'll go back and say, well, wasn't first-wave feminism a good thing, Roland? No, it wasn't. It essentially created the largest voting bloc in the United States. You've got the beta male guys who are essentially these sneaky fuckers, right? The cuttlefish, who will be happy to sort of align themselves with the feminine imperative as long as they possibly can. Kind of like pulls the teeth out of men having any kind of like organized solidarity.
Never about social justice. It's only about subjugation, enslavement, and entrainment. This that we face is not feminism. Feminism is a mask. What this is a death cult. This is a death cult.
Unsurprisingly, the manosphere is made up of a number of, say, infamous online subcultures. These including the MGTOWs, or men going their own way, who have sworn off women altogether, the red-pilled, who believe in a gynocentric conspiracy that the world is actually dominated and focused on women, the incels, the pickup artists, they're very cool, and of course the alpha male content creators. While they do have a category of their own, they definitely have a lot of overlap in beliefs with the other subgroups, usually in their shared disdain for, well, women.
Most women, quite frankly, are useless.
The alpha male sphere is most commonly found on popular video sharing spaces like YouTube and TikTok, and boy, are they thriving. Whether it's snappy advice in the form of shorts, hours-long podcasts, debates, or motivational videos, these guys make up a wildly successful and accessible part of the online manosphere, dressing
You
up
attack
their
Red.
not-so-subtle sexism and narrow views under the guise of self-improvement and modern dating advice. Although some drop the act and are just upfront about that.
You can't slander me, because I will state right now that I am absolutely sexist and I'm absolutely a misogynist. And I have you money, and you can't take it away. Because I'm a realist, and when you're a realist, you're sexist.
So what does it mean to be an alpha male? Well, despite this buzzword making its rounds in the social media space now more than ever, it's a concept that stuck around for decades before the dawn of TikTok or YouTube or the podcast hellscape. Rooted in the pseudoscience of us human beings having the supposedly same social hierarchy as that of animals in the wild, which I will get into, the alpha male is essentially the ultimate model of man. He's well respected, he's accomplished, women love him, and he's confident in the body he's given. And that's a pretty harmless, perfectly fine thing to aspire to. Their successes in areas of life a lot of us value. The problem, however, lies in the same way a lot of these manosphere groups tend to lose the plot. Their message can quickly devolve from be the best version of yourself to be our version of a man, or you're a failure. Being respected somehow shrinks into being dominant. Being accomplished gets morphed into private jets and Bugattis, and success with women boils down to keeping them in submission. Take, for instance, one of the most beloved figures of the internet today, Andrew Tate. Having made his name online as the social media king of both an ultra-masculine and ultra-luxurious lifestyle, Tate has made the rounds for his rather provocative brand of male-targeted self-help advice. Now, to be perfectly fair, the man has shared beliefs and advice that are actually quite valid. And I'm sure a lot of passionate Tate stans, if they're even watching, are about to defend him in the comments to say this, but I will clarify. He's said things that are, on their own, some pretty productive tenets to live by. Things like, do good by others, violence is bad in a romantic or family relationship, be honest, and others have the right to believe and act as they wish. All good things applicable to anyone really, man or woman. I can totally respect this. What I can't respect, though, is hypocrisy, because as much as Tate would tout these virtuous ideals, he contradicts himself a lot. For example, he's gone on to repeatedly teach young men how their value and purpose are tied to their work. He's all for overworking yourself as a man, bragging about how he literally doesn't sleep.
The fact I can't sleep.
I mean, that's pretty base, not sleeping,
I
bro.
You can't sleep, you need to see a psychiatrist. And I said, absolutely not. I'm glad I can't sleep. Good, I can train endlessly. That's why I'm bigger than I've ever been. I'll train I'm not going to waste a minute. It's fantastic that I can't sleep. It's all the time I need. So I can train endlessly. So my point is the answer is always hard work.
Saying that he doesn't believe in a work-life balance and full-on glorifying suffering and trauma, that they are crucial for your self-worth and success as a man.
The answer to everything is always the same. Hard work.
Catch up on every episode of Season 1. Because new in 2024, Season 2 returns. every episode and get ready for what's coming next on CBS.
Work harder. The worse things are, the harder I will work. My entire life is work. It's all work. Life is work. Existence is work. If I'm awake, I'm working. Every single thing I do is conscious. I work smart, I don't work hard, so I only have to work an hour a day. If working smart gets you a lot done in an hour a day, then you should work smart for 12 hours a day and get 12 times the work done. And people don't want to look at life that way. They want to talk about work-life balance and being lazy and all this crap. I don't believe in any of that. I believe in if you want to win, you have to outcompete the man who's prepared to do nothing but work. I haven't missed a day of work in 10 years. Maybe I've had days where I've gone driving the supercars and I've only done 2 hours work instead of 8 hours. I've never had a day where I thought, okay, I'm not going to work. My screen time on my phone is 9 hours a day, every fucking day. I am working. Earth must be conquered. Even the idea of resting aggravates my mind. I could sit around and complain about being tired. I could sit around and be a bitch. I could sit around and cry. Or I could just work harder than I've ever worked. I have Twitch streamers who are 19 years old, fat, drinking soya milk, who have millions and millions of people paying attention to them, and they're rich now, so they're statistically successful, but they are not men, and they will never become men. Because to be a man, you must suffer. You must suffer and you must survive. But you're a man, right? And if you're a man, then it's absolutely not really different experience of life. I think we're here to struggle. I think we're here to endure pain. The answer is always hard work. Anyone who's watching this, no matter what problem you're facing in your life, there's only one answer: work. Work harder. Think you work hard. You could work a lot harder.
But then he'll also go on a supposedly motivational speech about how you're not a successful man if you're working your ass off.
If you're working your
Boom.
ass off, you're a slave. You need freedom. Because you ain't a man if you're not free. My entire life is work.
You're a worker droid, a slave. Real successful men have freedom with their time. So which is it?
If you're not free, you're not a man. First, you're not a successful man. Freedom with your time. Freedom with your location. There's a riot. Cool. Go in Tokyo.
What? Sure. Did you just make that? Nice. There we go.
Try it.
Oh.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Are you almost done?
Mm-hmm. That guy's dumb.
Go spicy?
No, I got a piece of chip in my throat. Ah, sick. I think I can win here in a few. I didn't read what that person said.
See you later. Going to Australia. See you later. Bye.
Okay, to be fair, if he meant you shouldn't be working your ass off for another company, is he instead saying that you should be working your ass off to gain the freedom to continue working your ass off just for your own business ventures? But at that point, wouldn't you still be a slave to work? And then how exactly would you have freedom with your time, really? I don't know.
And going on about how your success can only be measured by how easy it is for you to travel to Japan or Australia or wherever you want on a whim completely dismisses the men out there who can't afford to simply trade their 9-to-5s to become business tycoons. Some just need to hustle through the daily rat race to literally survive. And just because they don't get to a point where they're literally living like a multi-millionaire doesn't make the reality any less valuable or successful in its own way. I know that sounds super cheesy, but the guy loves to hand out his success formulas like candy, forgetting that life isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of game. Of course, Tate
Yeah, I know that our alliance is over. Quit telling me what the fuck to do.
in touch with their emotions, believing that feelings are for girls.
Your friend's gonna go, oh, bro, you feel sad, man? Sorry to hear that, bro. It's hard to be sad, bro.
All right.
Bro. Oh, we're sad too, bro. I was sad last week. What the fuck's wrong with you?
What is my... let's see.
I don't feel motivated. I don't feel...
Yeah, I think I can take yellow and then take you.
For the girls, right? That's what they do.
Saying that I felt like crying, so I cried, this makes me a real man, is as stupid as me saying, well, I felt like smashing his face in, so I smashed his face in. We're all human. There's times in your life that, as a man, you're going to feel like crying. It's going to happen. But what you're supposed to do is not cry, because this is a test in mental fortitude. You're telling men to cry more.
Ah, there we go.
It's okay to feel this way, that way, except I have no self-control. That is why we have the problems we have.
So you cried.
There were tears that ran down my face, but I did not cry.
I mean, that's crying.
I would disagree.
Because you're worried about admitting just that.
Absolutely not. That's a perfectly fine scenario to cry in, but I think the act of crying is an act of desperation, to think, and to cry is an act in and of itself. To do push-ups, thinking of your children with tears running down your face, but you're concerned with finishing as many push-ups as possible within that.
There we go. Let's
Let's
see if this guy knows how to
believe in happiness, but that he also
1v1.
doesn't believe in depression either.
I think we're here to struggle and to learn. I don't think we're here to be happy. That's why we need to be
I don't think he does.
Oh, but I want to be happy. Why? Why do you want to sit there and laugh? You were happy your entire childhood. That's your happiness.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. Sick.
Anyone who's chasing happiness, I think that's a very feminine frame. People come to me and say, I'm not happy. I say, why should
Maybe he
you be
does.
happy? And we're all adults here. This infantile mindset that we're all supposed to be like we were when we were 3 years old. And, oh, something shiny, laugh all the time, run around in circles. We're grown-ups. And we have responsibilities. And we have problems and we have pressure. And
Yeah, he does know how to 1v1. Damn.
But I don't choose happy. So if you were to say to me, this cup of juice will make you happy, I'd say I don't want it. So when I feel depressed, I accept I just feel depressed. I don't believe I have depression because I don't believe depression is real. I feel depressed, and one day I'll stop feeling depressed because I can't have depression because it's not real.
Let's see it.
A ghost can't haunt you if you don't believe in ghosts. So if you're gonna sit there and go,
Maybe he doesn't know how to 1v1. Because that was a dumb move. Good game. Beautiful. For a second there, I thought that that guy knew how to 1v1, and then he made one of the dumbest moves ever that you could have. Yeah, Thomas began. Yep.
The depression is real, actually. You don't understand the problems I'm going through. You're a moron. You are a moron. It ain't real. There, I just put out the word, it's not real. You can come out and say whatever you want. It's not.
If you're the kind of person who feels like they need therapy,
I mean, I do believe that.
you're useless. So when men say, oh, I feel sad.
Depression is,
The world doesn't care.
like,
Call the men who are out
yeah.
to destroy you and think your girl don't care.
I have the same exact view on depression, and I've said it multiple times. I don't understand why people are so damn outraged by it because it's not that big of a deal.
As a man, you have to control your emotions. I don't give a shit.
Being depressed is just in your head, bro.
It's bullshit. There's your hope. It's bullshit. You're being a bitch. Get up and be a man.
You hear that, fellas? Just stop being sad. The world out here would be a much happier place.
Well, no, start working on yourself is what he's saying. He's saying, yeah, you're depressed, but there's probably reasons why you're depressed, so work on those things that are making you depressed, and then you'll become less depressed. Instead of just sitting at your fucking house and bitching all day, and just being sad. Look at her face, too. She, what the fuck? Bro, I paused it on such a...
Stop listening to this. Scientists and start listening to more alpha male podcasts. So the guy believes that depression, a clinical mental illness, is a myth, and that happiness is unproductive towards being a real.
I mean, there might be, but I guarantee most of depression is fake. Like, it's just people having shit in their life that they need to fix. So work on that, and then you'll probably be less depressed.
Interview about how the Matrix, his term for current society, I guess, doesn't.
Okay, we're going for.
I think that we set up the world now in a way where men are seen as worker droids. They're expected to go work all day, come home.
We're gonna go for.
Now you're coming home to a household where everyone just thinks you're the dude who should just work. You're just a worker droid. You're the slave. You're the robot, and your feelings don't matter. And your
Africa, I guess.
I feel sad. Who cares? The world doesn't care. All the men who are out here to destroy you and take your girl don't care.
Did you catch how upset he was about how men are just seen as work slaves? Sir, isn't that what you want? And despite honesty being one of his key tenets of masculinity, he's sure getting away with allegedly swindling netizens of their money with flimsy promises of wealth and fortune. CoffeeZilla has a great video breaking down his pretty misleading online course, Hustlers University, where the only person getting hustled is you, it seems. So I'll leave a link to that if you want to get more into it. I think I've spent long enough discussing how the supposed alpha of online alpha males may not actually have opinions worth listening to, but I of course can't mention Mr. Tate without bringing up a driving factor in his successful content. Misogyny. And lots of it.
Andrew is misogynistic. People who are going to walk through and repeat that. They have no evidence. They have no proof. They can't tell you why.
From writer-director Sam Esmail
This is a nightmare.
comes the movie critics are raving about.
You know something?
Leave the World Behind is one of the year's best.
No one is in control.
Julia Roberts. Mahershala Ali.
I have never seen anything like this.
Ethan Hawke.
Please help.
Kevin Bacon.
Haven't you been picking up on what's going on out there?
Leave the World Behind. Rated R. Now playing only on Netflix.
You're not gonna move your fucking troop, bro? What the fuck? Fuck you. I feel like I sounded Swedish when I said, what the fuck?
I will state right now, I am absolutely sexist and absolutely misogynist, and I have due money. You can't take it away. Women are
Based.
Women are a pain in the ass everywhere. This idea that you're going to go to some town somewhere and it's going to be the haven of beautiful girls who know their place, I don't believe that's real. I picked this up with my left hand. I still a jab. I swing low. What do women do? I don't let women drive me in cars or lose their mind when I say this. I'll drive. Never. Never ever drive me. What the f? Who's this guy? That's Cat. No! But would you let one of the boys drive it? Yeah, boys is fine. I said if I were to get on a plane.
Boys is fine. True.
That plane was to fly into the eye of a hurricane. There was a 50% chance of it crashing. I want a male pilot because I think that males are better under stress and under pressure.
Do you think women
Yeah.
are property of men?
No, the point
Why have you said they are?
Do you think that women are property? So I think my sister is my
Yes.
property. I believe the woman's given to the man. I believe she's given away by the father. I believe she belongs to the man.
So you
she
do,
belongs to
so
the man.
fundamentally, all right, so fundamentally you do believe that a woman becomes a man's property.
I believe she belongs to the man in marriage, correct?
I think that to me is misogyny.
And you're entitled to your opinion. Like, look, without disrespect, you're a 19-year-old female. What do you know? I don't expect you to know anything. So I don't know why you're trying to give me your opinion. I don't put any responsibility on you to perform in basically any way outside the bedroom. It's just the reality sexist. I guess I'm a little bit sexist. That's how it goes. I perfected this in pimp school. I got my PhD. We had to practice. If a girl comes at you, you cheated. It's bang out machete, boom in her face. You grip her up by the neck. What's up?
Grip her up by the neck.
Slap, grab, choke, shut up.
Kind of strange, but not out of character, to uphold values of being a good person and then also outright proudly admit to being a misogynist. Not to mention how the dude has also been charged for human trafficking and organized crime in Romania, so just green flags all around. And I'm not sure what's worse, the fact this dude's as gross and ridiculous as he is, or the fact that netizens across the globe have actually eaten this up. And this seems to be an overarching theme among other leading alpha male commentators. Currently sitting at 1.47 million subs at the recording of this video, the now demonetized Fresh and Fit podcast, hosted by two goobers named Walter Weeks and Myron Gaines, have made social media waves for their dating tips and advice on how to avoid being a beta male, which include not cooking because it is submissive and therefore the woman's job.
Should you cook for your girl? Guys, once you're a chef and you're like really good and you can use it as a PhD, no, she should be cooking for you because cooking is a submissive role. The girl should be cooking for you.
Having your girlfriend delete her Instagram because Instagram equals cheating in a relationship.
If you got a girl and you're dating her seriously, she's your main chick, and she has an Instagram as well as maybe sexy photos of herself on the internet, that is.
What are you doing?
You're just insecure, blah blah blah. No, if she wants a relationship with you, you're gonna have it on your terms, which means she isn't gonna do that cheating BS that Western society tells women they can do. Protect her from herself.
Not caring about pleasing her.
Who gives a about a woman's orgasm? Useless.
Right. And forbidding her.
I told you.
She can't go out with her girls when she's in a relationship with you?
No.
What? Where does she get to feed herself and not have to think about mom or you know?
With the children.
There is at least one time or one day out of the month that I want to go out for myself. Not go to the club because I want to go to the club, but I love to dance.
So,
You get
how
me?
about this option? Hire a babysitter, right? And then
I just want to go to the beach. And
Can I kill? No, I can't. There's that over there.
Anytime a man puts his foot down or represses female sexuality, it's considered
Damn.
toxic or insecure or you're controlling. No, I'm in control. That's the difference. I don't let you dictate how this goes.
How about I translate what you're implicitly saying in all of this, Myron? I'm a grown-ass adult who can't cook. I'm insecure and have trust issues. I've got bad bedroom game.
No, that's not what he's saying.
secure, and have trust issues. Yeah, they all sound like you problems at the end of the day. It's kind of remarkable, really, how much they tell on themselves while pretending to be paragons of male confidence. It's needless for me to say at this point that they pretty much primarily view women as accessories for status and sexual pleasure. I mean, just listen to what Myron deems as the key rules for being a worthy girlfriend.
Does your girl, 1, cook and clean unprompted? Does she shut up in front of your friends? Does she ask for your permission to do things out of respect? Does she forego hanging out with friends in public settings such as clubs, nightclubs, etc. for you? Does she give you sex regardless of how she feels? And then finally, does she give up her social media for you? If she isn't doing these basic things for you guys, you need to start really considering if this girl is the one. If a chick isn't, she's not respecting you, she's not sucking your drunken in, she's not making you food, she's not serving you, she's useless. I'm gonna say that again.
Their dating advice doesn't come down to building healthy romantic relationships nurtured through mutual love and respect.
There we
It's
go.
about finding a woman who they can ultimately control while still getting their rocks off, and who also doubles as their maid. That's very important. In fact, it's quite interesting how much they view being with women as a burden beyond these things. Having a female partner is ultimately a net loss unless they're a housekeeping service and an on-call sex machine. Unlike what I've seen with Andrew Tate, however, these guys even go as far as to give women relationship advice, usually the ones they're somehow able to pull onto their podcast. A few noteworthy gems include how fidelity is the woman's job.
Sexual fidelity is a woman's role, okay? A man is capable.
All right, I'm gonna kill Pink next round. I should be able to kill them. Yeah.
Providing for multiple women. If you're gonna date a man that's attractive, tall, has money, whatever, be prepared to share it. Female loyalty is sexual fidelity, but again, we're going back to how women think men and women are the same. They think, well, you should also exercise sexual fidelity. No, men and women are different.
How women should simply be seen, not heard.
Women are be seen and not be heard, bro. Like if I bring you around my
Yeah.
And how a low body count, aka the number of people you've slept with, is imperative. But of course, this doesn't apply to the guy, because that's just the way it is.
The reason why I brought it is because it matters for men. It doesn't matter for women. That's the
So it doesn't matter for women? You don't think
No. Like,
if a guy's ran through, I'll be like, oh.
there's no such thing as a guy getting ran through. Men run through women. It's not the other way around. I don't know why we live in this crazy world where women think men and women are equal. It's not. There's no such thing as male hoes. There's a reason why men that have sex with a lot of women are respected and women that have sex with a lot of men are admonished. Yes. So a man that has sex with a lot of women brings value to the world to some degree. Women that have sex with a lot of dudes lose value in the world to some degree.
I think a lot of sexual partners is bad for both genders.
It's wrong. It's actually bad for women, not for men. Sex does not affect men the same way it does women. I wish we can go back to a time where you're getting married at virgins, the families know each other, she comes from a good household, her dad was in her like, blah, blah, blah. Those days are fucking done.
I will say, it does make sense how much this guy wants a submissive yes girl for a wife, a dog.
Shit!
As it seems like the
Not what I needed.
Back from a woman sends him into a borderline tantrum.
Keep reminding me that I'm your age.
No,
It's okay. It's okay.
You're 42, right?
It's okay. It's okay. But
I'm not your age.
it's okay. That's okay. That's okay. They do have it for men, so your grade is conflicting.
This exemplifies
That actually helped.
She's on my podcast. I think crazy talking like this. And the reason why is because most guys don't give women consequences for their poor decisions. So
But I need to fucking.
It's ridiculous.
If you're gonna state an opinion, that's one thing. But if you're gonna state a fact and you have multiple
Alright.
females on here telling you that's not true,
What are you talking, bro? What are you talking about?
bro, you're literally saying that all
Right
females
now,
want what did you say?
boom.
All females want what? Repeat what you just said if you remember what you just said. You can't, right? All right, next topic.
Yo, who do you think you are, bro?
I'm
Like,
Lance.
seriously.
That's who I think I am. We're all here for a show.
Oh, and
Speak our
that's all
opinion.
the podcast.
Wait, speak our opinion.
5, boom.
Yo, who the f are you yelling at?
Next days.
I don't like what you're doing here because I literally now for the third time maybe that I said.
Let's set some ground rules. Let's set some ground rules. Do not ever yell at me again. Don't do that. Do not yell at me. I don't know who the hell you are.
Don't cuss at me.
Yo, get the fuck show.
I would. I don't know.
Ugh.
I'm not one who sits on your that's gonna see me let you talk crazy.
I appreciate you letting us be here.
People are still talking, man.
I was
Goddamn.
appreciate it.
You're talking right now. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, shut up. Gotta get these old chicks to check. It's wild out here. I'm talking.
Nah, I'm
Shut
all
up.
dead.
Chivalry is dead because women have more options than they ever had before thanks to the internet, dating apps, etc. So therefore, why is a girl gonna sit there and take roses from the nice guy when she has a bad boy NBA player fighting in her DMs if she's attractive enough?
Depends on the
You should focus on controlling your emotions. The more emotionally volatile the girl is, the more stable and stoic you.
Hey guys, we appreciate you letting us be here.
People are still talking, man.
I was just saying.
Probably why they try to only ever get women on who they know can challenge them on their beliefs, so they can happily spout their garbage.
No, they've gotten women on who are like in the business of talking about this shit.
Editing out of here. So I think it's also hilarious to note that they were once exposed for allegedly using a sugar baby service app to essentially pay some girl
Yeah, that was pretty fucking cringe. If you're doing that, that's cringe as fuck.
on their show.
You approached me on a sugar daddy website and asked me to be your sugar baby and then couldn't afford my allowance.
Shit. Him being a bot really fucks me.
Or to be on a f***ing app is called Seeking Arrangements to troll women.
Fuck!
Girls have talked about it because that's his thing. That's how he
Attack
gets
them at least too.
The fact that I don't pay girls on Twitter sites.
No!
Also, because I use it as a dating site, I've said it many times.
That is gold. But it's not just the men leading this crusade against the modern ladies everywhere. In just the past year, a new fighter has entered the ring, this time in the shape of a 26-year-old woman named Pearl Davis.
In general, men are better than women. No, that is not to be funny. Yes, I 100% believe that.
Now, Pearl is interesting because she blatantly advocates for policies and societal values that would degrade and critically disadvantage her as a woman. All the while, propping men up to be the superior gender and championing what she believes to be the playbook of ideal masculinity. And with this, she'll also often excuse the bad behaviors of certain men for no other reason than that's just the way it goes.
And I honestly am just really tired of people exposing and cheating men. Well, we know rich men cheat. They've always cheated. The top 15% of men have always had harems of women. This is me saying, all right, if you go for this type of guy, this is probably what you can expect. And I think as women, it's better to just accept that may happen and that you should stick it out.
Men, I just think, are biologically predisposed to sleep with a lot of
Shit! Of course, this same charity is never extended to women who are often her favorite subject of criticism. A man cheated? Well, the woman shouldn't have picked the wrong guy.
I guess you could say, oh, I hate cheaters, but we pick them. We all know that the majority of men can't cheat, so if we're picking a guy that cheats, is there a part of us that likes the drama?
A man was handed divorce papers? Well, that's because his wife's just being selfish.
You've got to ask yourself these questions. Why are the women turning back on them then? Because they're selfish. Because they're selfish. Apart from being selfish, you need more than selfishness. Because I mean, some of the numbers, like some of the top indicators of divorce are financial cheating and irreconcilable differences. Yeah, that's like the top three.
It's funny how she's subtly implying how all these factors must be the woman's fault. And if she isn't, then she pretty much just contradicted her own argument. She's also lamented how dudes are struggling in the dating market because not enough women are choosing to stay virgins for them, which she states is a prerequisite for most men.
They don't have a choice. Like, no guy expects a virgin. Guys adapt to the market. Because there's studies that indicate that it's a need for men. So if it's a need and the whole market is non-virgin women, like, what are they supposed to do?
Forget how it's these specific guys having an outdated view of relationships and women in general. It's the femoids choosing to abandon such virtuous purity. To Pearl, it's as if nearly every issue men face today and what she sees are our current societal problems squarely lands on the shoulders of modern women. She's repeatedly generalized today's women as narcissistic, hypergamous, ungrateful, conniving, self-centered, and most of all, stupid.
I literally couldn't think of one thing that women are better at.
Giving birth.
If men could figure out a way to do it, I would argue they'd figure out a way to do it.
Well, let's hope they don't.
Which have led to policy changes and cultural shifts that have only kept men from fulfilling their birthright as the dominant place in society.
Honestly, guys, I think it's quite weird when you see female bosses like yelling at young men. It's like such a weird dynamic to me. It's a weird dynamic to see like women having power over men.
It should come as no surprise then that this woman absolutely loathes women's progress in all forms, all the way down to the suffrage movement.
So what is, you say your anti-feminism, feminism was basically a mistake. And that's, are you going back to the beginning of feminism? Like the whole history of feminism, like women's suffrage and everything?
Yeah, no, I don't.
You don't with women's suffrage?
No.
You don't think women should get the right to vote?
No, I don't.
Okay, so are you serious or are you kidding?
No, I'm serious.
Okay, so women shouldn't have the right to vote.
Yeah.
Why?
No. Because men are signed up for selective service, so they're fined $300,000 if they don't sign up for selective service when they're 18. I think if we want the same rights, it comes with the same responsibilities.
Do you think women should be drafted into the army?
No.
Okay.
No, what the
She believes
fuck?
our purpose in life is to marry and procreate as early as the law permits it if possible.
You're speaking to women. You're saying past 22, your value's going down. And,
yes,
and your message...
to men, and your value on the sexual marketplace. I mean, don't wait till 35 to get married. Get married as young as you can.
The elites, the feminists want you to spend your reproductive years working instead of raising a family.
Completely neglecting how she should probably get off the internet and abandon her widely successful and profitable career if she truly believed and lived by her principles.
So why should I engage with in a conversation with you at all if women are just emotional? Shouldn't I be talking to a man about this?
Probably.
Why do you bother to even have a platform? Shouldn't you just concede to a man?
Yeah, probably. You know.
So we gotta look for a man to replace you.
In fact, she's even referred to equal rights as a somehow evil concept, a mere product of the modern woman's delusion.
They've even brainwashed us in the church telling us, oh, we need to equally submit to our husband. Guys, we have to start calling this shit out. Anything that implies we're equal is evil. And it is brainwashing, and it is meant to break down the family and break down society.
Which brings me to one of the major reasons I think these creators and their followers express such searing devotion towards these old school ideals of masculinity and gender roles. A lot of it is rooted in this pushback against changing ideas of what it means to be a man or woman in today's current and continuously evolving society. We're now constantly challenging whether the damaging stereotypes of masculinity are the only way a man can be. The very ideas that taught us boys don't cry, or the number of women you bed is somehow tied to your
Shit.
down to the more arbitrary lines
Well,
between what are girl things and what are boy things, and God forbid
that person botting out really fucked me.
you like any of the girl things. Likewise, we're now increasingly critical of the double standards placed on women and continuously empower them to reach for the same independence and success as men back in the day. And a lot of us embrace these changes. It's good. It's progress.
Attack.
For others,
Attack.
it's uncomfortable to see the structures and lifestyles we
Yes!
fall apart at the feet of these new perspectives. And that's a completely normal thing to feel, but while many may at least choose to understand where these new views are coming from, others will simply dig their heels in and deem these changes as destructive to their
Fuck
society.
yes.
So they see it as a zero-sum objective,
Whew.
but the empowerment of the disadvantaged or minority must necessarily lead to the oppression of the already privileged majority.
That was
Those
good.
who support the former are simply brainwashed droids that need to be deprogrammed, a term they literally use to describe those with more progressive views on gender roles, women especially.
We live in a world now where women enter the workforce, they go to school, they're more educated. They've kind of put their career first over having feminine duties and motherly responsibilities. A lot of women stave off these things to pursue a career. If your girl grew up in the United States or came from a higher education, whatever it may be, you're gonna have to deprogram certain bad habits. If I get a girl, right, that was raised in the West, no offense, I'm gonna have to detrain a lot of bad habits out of her. I wanna go girls' nights out. No. Oh, I wanna go hang out with my friends at the club. No. I wanna do this. No.
Is it hating women to let them know at 35 you're basically biologically useless to men and maybe we should try to have kids earlier rather than later? Wouldn't that be good for someone that's 18 to hear 16? I'm not really worried about the older women because, I mean, I think it's tough to deprogram most of this stuff.
There we go.
Women are programmable. Women are blank slates.
Whew.
Programmed by you as a man or programmed by society. The good wife who obeys her man, cooks for him, and cleans for him, is programmed by her man. The woman who goes, I don't need to be a feminist, that's been programmed by society. They're all born blank. And someone
That was good. I was scared for a second there.
For people like Tate and Fresh and Fit and Pearl Davis, accepting gender equality or new forms of masculinity will mean abandoning the clear-cut, familiar guidelines set by traditionalism. And if you're an impressionable young man or woman, embracing the latter is ultimately easier than challenging these norms and adopting a more fluid perspective of the world. Which is why the dudes who fall in this camp can so easily consume alpha male ideologies. It gives them a simplified, stable guideline of how to be. Simply do these things and you're fulfilling your purpose as a man. It's a black and white, but ultimately convenient way of building confidence in one's male identity, asserting this rigid binary between real successful masculinity, aka the alpha male, and weak, undesirable masculinity, aka the beta male, using the latter as a quick and simple narrative to explain their failures. The former, on the other hand, promises physical fitness, sexual prowess, and wealth, their trifecta of ultimate manhood. And given how they're selling a concept like snake oil, most leading figures in the alpha male sphere will go to near absurd lengths to prove their dominance in each category. They'll speak of pulling women like they're collecting Pokemon, even if it means telling some embarrassing tall tales.
Shit! Pool party. He's an NBA player. So I give him Instagram. And lo and behold, he followed me. He said, "Wait, you know this chick?" So he posted this girl's profile. I was like, "Yeah, I know her, bro. I used to do her back in the day." He's like, "Damn, that's my shorty when I come in town." So basically, we're smashing the same chick.
No, you weren't. The only thing you've been smashing is your meat into your hand, you liar.
I'm at his magic party, right? There's like 40 girls and like 5 guys. He says to me, "Yo, come through, bro." So he's like, "Yo, pick 3 that you want, and I got you." I was like, "3 that I want? It's like a buffet? Shoot, I'll take it."
Bro, this does not sound like an NBA player. This sounds like human trafficking.
The constant tough guy posturing is a staple, as is their incessant flexing of a lavish lifestyle. And boy, is the promise of wealth a real thing in this field of content. These creators also seem to double as supposed financial advisors, with Tate taking the cake on that one. So it's clear why their message sells. Spun through well-spoken words, a charismatic presence, and an exceptionally thin veil of pseudo-intellectualism, these people dangle men a promise of an instant upgrade to life. So long as you buy their courses, check out their affiliate links, and sub to their channel, of course. We'll get to all of that. And seeing how the internet has fostered this culture of packaging one's personality or identity into catchy, convenient terms, what's more empowering than the alpha male label? It's like a shortcut to validating one's masculinity, or at least helping them make sense of how to be amid societal expectations of manliness. And with such weight placed on labels, the community has gone on to spawn another form of alpha maleness, this time with a dash of mystery and, somehow even cringier Instagram quotes.
The Sigma male.
If you spent enough time in the realm of TikTok, Instagram,
Based.
or even YouTube Shorts, then you've likely come across this brand of content at least once. This
Whew,
is the Sigma
there we
male.
go.
Characterized by Urban Dictionary as a socially disinterested loner, the Sigma male is like the alpha's more introverted brother. Both claim to be at the top of the food chain, but whereas alpha males seek power through dominance and bravado, Sigmas thrive on being quiet, cool, and calculating to gain the upper hand. Silence is their strategy, ensuring they stay an enigmatic or mysterious presence that no one, especially their enemies, can decipher. These guys claim to be lone wolves, defying the need for external validation and refusing to conform to social norms. Which is why if you want to be a Sigma male and gain the standard successes of wealth, status, and women, be sure to read our guidebooks on how to use and watch our endless tutorials for the exact steps to playing by your own rules. As you can probably tell, consistency is optional.
Most of the time, the Sigma male thing doesn't have any of that. That's more of like the alpha male shit.
When it comes to these manosphere archetypes, but they strike a chord with plenty of mainly young men regardless, and the Sigma male is no exception. Who cares about the irony of trying to look cool while claiming to not care what others think? It's easy to forget this paradox when you're fed with flashy content that, similarly to the alpha male's playbook, promises you the keys to self-confidence and financial success. Sigma males go a step further, however, to declare themselves apart from the existing social hierarchy. They proudly forge their own independent path, and this resonates particularly among the more reserved personality types in their audience. So far, none of the stuff I've mentioned again is inherently harmful. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being a more calculated or introverted person or using these traits to your advantage. Once again, to be fair, a lot of Sigma male content could also just be basic self-improvement tips, like be independent, be self-reliant, think for yourself type of mantras. But like with a lot of alpha male advice, things start to get a little sus when you begin claiming your superiority to others based on these traits. So introspection and silence may be equated to being some dark intellectual genius way smarter than everyone else. Being more cool and calculated suggests you're secretly dangerous with the hidden power to manipulate others to your bidding. An uncaring attitude just means you're above the schmucks who conform to the whims of conventional society. For the men out there who feel alone or misunderstood, it could serve as a quick yet misguided assurance that they're not lost. They're just somehow better than the rest. And needless to say, a superiority complex won't fix your insecurities. In fact, most, if not all the time, it's indicative of them. Still, the Sigma continues to be admired as the rarest male archetype that ironically thousands of people identify with, and is even further glorified through characters in fictional media. And you definitely know the type: brooding, troubled, yet effortlessly cool. The anti-heroes of Little Words, often played by Keanu Reeves, Ryan Gosling, or Cillian Murphy. These guys are typically written as the loners or eccentric outsiders of their society, though exude magnetic charisma and boast triumphant
The literally me people.
against their oppressors.
It's literally me,
Strength,
bro.
Intellectual brilliance, and most importantly, unshakable self-confidence to get their way in most situations, despite their enigmatic facade. The admiration for these protagonists has become such a trend that it's even spawned its own meme, the literally me characters of popular media, with the name reflecting how many viewers tend to self-identify with these figures. Plenty of them, after all, represent the underdog story or depict common grievances in society. Taxi Driver's Travis Bickle, a grandfather of this character trope, could be seen as an early example. A former soldier suffering existential crises, he wrestles with his crippling loneliness and a burning vigilante's desire to rid the streets of its crime and perceived depravity. In recent years, years, we've gotten Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, an outcast who finds power in being an anarchic symbol of chaos and rebellion. Drive's unnamed protagonist is a stoic, lonely guy who finds purpose in protecting a woman he falls in love with. Each one your textbook social renegade, all Sigma males in their own right. It makes sense how many experiencing similar discontent will find catharsis in not only watching these relatable struggles play out on screen, but also seeing them conquered by gripping, charismatic leads. As written by Logan Bry of Michigan State University's The Current, these characters don't idly decay in a state of misery, but rather they take matters into their own hands and see satisfaction for themselves, which is inspiring. But I probably don't have to tell you how all this charm usually harbors a dark side. Machiavellianism and skewed philosophies are also common traits written into these characters, helping them justify their often morally dubious means of taking action or enacting change, which could involve being an asshole at best and, the odd murder at worst. And don't get me wrong, these things are what make them compelling. The fact that they're not your squeaky clean saviors adds layers of complexity to the stories they tell. Sometimes they're even just a straight up villain in the grand scheme of things, but it's fascinating to watch how they grapple with their morality, or lack of one. Unfortunately, and this isn't necessarily the fault of the writers, their captivating allure can often blind certain audiences to their flaws. And a lot of them are also brought to life by excellent and or conventionally attractive actors, which adds to their magnetism. If you're viewing things selectively or at surface level, it can be easy to overlook their twisted ethics or the cautionary tales they actually represent. Instead, they become icons for their superficial charms and supposed victories.
Alright, I love you.
To resonate with and admire. Which brings me to a leading example of this. Christian Bale's Patrick Bateman.
Do you know what Ed Gein said about women? Ed Gein, Major Dick Howard. No, serial killer, Wisconsin in the 50s.
What did that say?
He said, when I see a pretty girl walking down the street, I think two things. One part of me wants to take her out, talk to her, be real nice and sweet, and treat her right.
What the other part of me think?
What her head would look like on a stick.
Considering this dude comes straight out of a flick called American Psycho, it's kind of hilarious how he's become the poster boy for the literally me crowd. Anyway, released in 2001 to an initially divisive response from both audiences and critics, American Psycho follows the disturbing life of an investment banker named Patrick Bateman. The man revels in the wealthy excesses of his superficial yuppie lifestyle, basking in designer suits, exclusive restaurants, and, well, homicidal tendencies. On the surface, the film offers up an incredibly lavish image of American consumerism and Wall Street culture, displaying its characters in various settings of status and luxury. Bateman is rarely seen without a perfectly pressed suit and tie and a meticulously groomed appearance. His scenes are constantly punctuated with visual details of opulence and material wealth. The same extends to the rest of his peers, who showcase just as much prestige. This impression alone could explain why Bateman's become a popular icon for the literally me Sigma community. He symbolizes success while exuding supposedly stoic confidence. And it helps that he's of course played by Christian Bale, who looks like a Greek statue come to life. Numerous YouTube shorts and TikToks embrace Bateman as the face for motivational Sigma content. And yes, while a lot of this stuff is also just ironic and for a fun meme, there are those, and many, that unironically glamorize his phrases, his routine, and his supposedly confident demeanor. It's ironic how the characters enjoyed a renewed popularity in recent times due to his seemingly cool disposition and stature. Since back in the mid-2000s, his cult following was born when audiences began embracing these elements as intended. Satire. Patrick Bateman, for all his wealth and superficial bravado, lives an ultimately hollow existence. His obsession with upkeeping a perfect image, particularly among those he considers upper class or elite, is a glaring spotlight on his deep-seated insecurities and desperate need for validation. He's caught in a world where appearances are everything, and yet there's nothing beneath the surface. None of his fancy suits or designer accessories can fill his lingering emptiness. He attempts to sound enlightened or intellectual with his opinions, but merely parrots the popular sentiments of the current era.
Come on, Bryce. There are a lot more important problems in Sri Lanka. We have to end apartheid for one. Slow down the nuclear arms race, stop terrorism, and world hunger. We have to provide food and shelter for the homeless, and oppose racial discrimination, and promote civil rights. We have to encourage a return to traditional moral values. We have to promote general social concern, less materialism, and help people.
Even the way he lists off these political issues sounds inauthentic, as if he's reading off a script. So you can see the irony in genuinely using this guy as your Sigma grindset king, for a concept that supposedly hails the ethos of not giving a fuck. The man sure does crumble at the slightest threats to his social standing.
I can't believe that Bryce prefers Van Patten's card to mine.
Alright.
That's what